Chapter 276. G-Number Lifespan. Wandering Immortal's arrival. After arriving at the Outer World Cave, Guan indeed saw a seventh-order medicinal grass maturing. However, he felt it could still be left to grow, as the roots at the bottom of the plant kept growing, generating more seeds in the surrounding soil. Guan watched for a while. He didn't pick it, looking forward to it producing more seeds for better sustainable development. Having already reached the 9th layer of the Mystic Law Spirit Immortal realm, Guan no longer needed to rush to harvest thousands or even tens of thousands of years of lifespan. His goal was 100 million years of lifespan. As long as the overall time taken was shorter, that was fine. If the high-rank medicinal herbs in the Outer World Cave reached maturity, he might be able to harvest tens of millions of years of lifespan in one go. Just thinking about it made him a little excited. I'm planning to expand this cave. Later you can move in. If you get bored, you can also raise some demons, but they must know the rules and not damage my medicinal herbs. Guan looked at the boundless medicinal garden and smiled softly. Hearing his words, Tian Yaoer and the other two women were very excited and began to imagine things together. Compared to raising demons, they were more eager to go out and explore. Guan promised them that once they reached the Mahayana realm, they could go out and play, which was also for their own good. Upon hearing about the Mahayana realm, the three women's faces all fell. How long would they have to cultivate to reach that level? The world outside is dangerous. If you get caught, being bullied would be the least of your worries. You might be skinned alive, have your flesh turned into elixirs and your bones made into ornaments. Guan shook his head, scaring the three women in just a few sentences, making them not dare to think about going out anymore. Before meeting Guan, they had all faced hardships. Tian Yaoer had been kept in captivity by the Heaven Phoenix Demon Mother, while Tian Qing and Tian Bai were orphans who roamed everywhere after their parents died. During that time their wounds had never healed. Tian Qing sighed. It's better to focus on cultivation and not raise any more demons to avoid distractions. Tian Bai hugged Guan's arm and nodded, swaying her body. Seeing this, Tian Yaoer quickly pushed her away and then took Guan's arm herself. There's a calamity brewing outside right now. Guan's heart fluttered, but his face remained serious as he began to talk about the calamity on the ocean. The three women were quickly intrigued and listened attentively. The sea-breaking rift, divine exotic realm, divine exotic resentful ghosts, and other details made them tremble with fear. Immortal and indestructible ghosts, they didn't know how to deal with them. Master, will this calamity affect you? Should you hide in the cave? If the forces on the sea can't handle it, it will eventually spread to the continent where we are. How could there be such terrifying ghosts in the world? The three women started chattering again. After staying in the Outer World Cave for an hour, Guan finally returned to the Supreme Sect. He went to the Third Medicine Valley, habitually going to watch Nine-Fingered Divine Lord play Go, but was stopped by Yu Yingying on the way. Why do you smell so fragrant? And it's not just one type. You didn't visit a brothel, did you? Yu Yingying looked at him, perplexed. Guan's mouth twitched. He said irritably, nonsense. Can't you talk more decently? Fine, did you go to the Pleasant Fragrance Pavilion? That would be cleaner than you. Yu Yingying wasn't angry at his retort and instead smiled. Indeed, no man is any good. Guan couldn't be bothered with her and walked past her. Wait, the Star Sea congregations are giving the Supreme Sect 1,000 cultivation spots for 5 years. If you want to go, I can help you get one. Yu Yingying caught up and said. Guan didn't turn his head. With my relationship with the sect leader, do I need your help? Yu Yingying responded. The Supreme Sect will surely choose the 1,000 most talented disciples. Even if you go, considering your cultivation level, you'll only feel pressured. If I put in a word for you, you'll have a better experience and greater gains. You might even go into closed-door cultivation upon returning and break through to the nascent soul realm. Guan stopped and looked at her. This girl only had a foundation establishment cultivation level, but her tone was so grand, indicating her high status within the Star Sea congregations. Guan suddenly became interested and began probing the mysterious power of cause and effect within Yu Yingying's body. He had long noticed that Yu Yingying's cultivation level was suppressed by this mysterious power of cause and effect, but he didn't want to cause trouble before, so he had been too lazy to investigate. Now, with his higher cultivation level, he could take a look. Because of this power of cause and effect, Guan couldn't directly deduce her fate. Suddenly, Guan saw a grotesque face bursting out from Yu Yingying's body, lunging at him then dissipating into smoke. This was just an illusion without any real destructive power. Seeing through this illusion, Guan felt puzzled. What's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything? Are you thinking about how to thank me? It's simple. Just write another journey to the west, focusing on the story after Sun Wukong becomes the victorious fighting Buddha. Stop wandering around aimlessly without any proper work, Yu Yingying said with her hands on her hips. Guan laughed. No way, this stops here. Some stories don't need to be written to the end. Leaving space for imagination makes them continually intriguing. Yu Yingying gave him a glare and asked, Are you going or not? I'm not going. Thanks for your goodwill, but I'd rather spend my life peacefully in the Medicine Valley. If I go and your Star Sea holy daughter falls for me, what then? Pa shameless. Our Star Sea congregations don't have any holy daughter. Being entangled by a female genius is also quite stressful, just like now. Yu Yingying started to make a move and Guan quickly jumped away and slipped away. This guy really didn't know what was good for him. Guan was afraid he might kill her with a single shock. Life continued quietly. After going to outer heaven once, Guan didn't go back. Having roughly understood the great heavenly spirit land, he felt no need to go again. The first snow of winter quietly arrived, and the third Medicine Valley gradually turned white. Guan went downstairs and stood in front of the pavilion, raising his right hand to touch the falling snow. Feeling the slight chill in his palm, Guan's mood became joyful. His gaze turned to the entrance of the valley, where a vague figure was walking through the white, snowy landscape. A wandering immortal and at the 9th layer. It was because of this person's arrival that Guan had come downstairs. Why would a wandering immortal arrive for no apparent reason? Guan watched quietly as that person entered the valley. The person was a handsome monk draped in a cassock holding prayer beads, advancing with his eyes closed. The falling snow formed a white cape on his shoulders. Xianxia, Wandering Immortal Realm 9th Layer 45865/19000/999999. A lifespan of 999,999 years? Guan had never seen such an extreme lifespan before. This was definitely the highest lifespan beyond nirvana he had ever seen. 9 was the highest number. He wondered if and how and Yangjian after their nirvana could reach such a lifespan. Guan pondered thoughtfully, watching as Xianxia walked toward the Go area in the Medicine Valley, evidently heading for Nine-Finger Divine Lord. Many disciples in the valley noticed Xianxin's arrival. So not only was Guan watching him, Xianxia did not draw much of his attention, and he did not even open his eyes. After arriving among the crowd, Xianxia heard Nine-Finger Divine Lord's urging voice. Can you play faster? Your slow pace makes you an indecisive player. Nine-Finger Divine Lord looked impatient with his arms crossed. Across from him, Elder Lu muttered, You were even slower than me when you played against my master. Nine-Finger Divine Lord glared and replied, I wanted to drag it out and win against your master. Do you think you can drag it out and win against me? Even if you lay in a coffin, I could leisurely sit here and wait for your next move. Does it have any meaning? Hearing this, Elder Lu's face turned green. The surrounding disciples, displeased, began to criticize Nine-Finger Divine Lord for speaking excessively. Of course they dared to speak out because they knew Nine-Finger Divine Lord well and knew he wouldn't be genuinely angry. Unbeknownst to when Nine-Finger Divine Lord within the 3rd Medicine Valley could show his true self without pretenses, and he enjoyed this feeling. Even in the midst of verbally jousting with everyone, Nine-Finger Divine Lord glanced at Xianxia in the crowd. He only took a look before withdrawing his gaze. Xianxia opened his eyes and began observing the game. After an hour, Elder Lu conceded the match. Others took turns playing while Xianxia stood by and watched. Although they were curious about him, no one questioned him further. By now they were used to great cultivators coming to the Medicine Valley to observe Go games, all for Nine-Finger Divine Lord. Guan did not continue to watch Xianxia. He rode the Blood Prison Great Saint and began to patrol the Medicine Valley. After noon, Nine-Finger Divine Lord won another game. He looked at Xianxia and said, Little monk, want to play a round? Xianxia responded, Amit Ba, then I humbly seek your guidance. The disciples, seeing his exceptional aura, made way. After taking a seat, Xianxia made the first move. Having observed 3 games, he already knew the rules. With a smirk, Nine-Finger Divine Lord adopted Gu's aura and played each move faster than the last. In just 30 minutes Xianxia lost. Nine-Finger Divine Lord asked proudly, "How was it? How do you find this game?" Xianxia pondered, "It truly contains profound principles. The small board encompasses myriad phenomena. Black and white swallowing each other resembles the competition of all things in heaven and earth, ever-changing. Can turn despair into hope and hide traps to kill, very intriguing." Nine-Finger Divine Lord stood up. "Let's go somewhere else to chat. We shouldn't disturb the others playing Go." Xianxia nodded and stood up. The disciples sighed in relief. With Nine-Finger Divine Lord gone, they could enjoy the fun of Go without his constant guidance. Nine-Finger Divine Lord wasn't only formidable at playing but also loved to instruct them, making their game experience quite torturous. The two walked along the path in the Medicine Valley. Nine-Finger Divine Lord, gazing at the boundless sky, asked, "Little monk, why are you here? Just passing by or directed by the Bittersea Buddha sect?" With hands pressed together, Xianxia replied, "I am commanded to go to the sea-breaking rift. Passing by here I sensed your presence, so I came to visit. I didn't expect to find other disciples of my sect in this supreme sect. Observing the chi fortune of this sect, perhaps you intend to support it?" Nine-Finger Divine Lord laughed. "Supporting them? You haven't heard of Sword Venerable Fudao?" As Xianxia was about to inquire, his attention suddenly shifted to Yu Yingying, who was passing by at a distance. His brows immediately furrowed. Nine-Finger Divine Lord noticed his gaze and asked, "You saw her too? What will you do about it?" His tone was intriguing, as if eager for a spectacle. Taking a deep breath, Xianxia replied, "A demon should naturally be eradicated." Chapter 277 Reincarnation of the Heavenly Demon. Xianxin's terror. As Xianxia finished speaking, his eyes sharpened and he actually stepped towards Yu Yingying. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord quickly grabbed him, scolding, "Do you really dare to act recklessly? This girl is from the Star Sea congregations, and besides, this place belongs to Sword Venerable Fudao. You better not cause trouble." Xianxia sternly said, "Exorcising demons is the duty of us disciples of the Buddhism sect. How can we neglect it out of fear of the strong?" He immediately shook off the Nine-Finger Divine Lord's hand, trying to break free. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord said in a deep voice, "There are countless demons in the world. This demon has not yet done any evil. How can you act directly? Don't forget your mission. There are greater calamities that require your intervention." He felt a headache coming on. How could this lad be even more stubborn than 10,000 years ago? Although he knew that Yu Yingying had no relation to Sword Venerable Fudao, causing trouble here would inevitably break the peace of Medicine Valley, something he did not wish to see happen. Xianxia frowned, his gaze fixed on Yu Yingying. Yu Yingying seemed to sense something and turned her head to look at Xianxia. Their gazes pierced through the endless white snow, colliding in midair. For some reason, upon seeing him, Yu Yingying inexplicably felt uncomfortable and a bit scared. She instinctively avoided Xianxin's gaze and ran away. After walking some distance, her panic did not subside, and she looked back instinctively, only to find Xianxia still staring at her, scaring her into quickening her pace. She hurriedly walked away in a daze until she bumped into someone, waking her up. She took a closer look and found that she had bumped into Guan amidst the falling snow. Guan stood in his blue robe, drifting with the wind. He held a mirror in his hand like a folding fan. The hair crown on his head reflected the light, and along with the gold pattern on his forehead, it made Yu Yingying stare in awe. For the first time, Yu Yingying felt that Guan had such an air of elegance. If there were truly immortals in this world, they would probably look like this. "What's wrong with you?" Guan asked. Of course, he knew what was going on, but he had to pretend to be oblivious. Yu Yingying snapped out of her daze and for some reason felt calmer in front of Guan. "Just now, a monk kept staring at me," Yu Yingying said aggrievedly. Guan laughed. "Aren't you the one who's fearless? How can you be afraid of a mere monk?" Yu Yingying glared. "I don't know why, I just felt uneasy under his gaze." "Uneasy? Did you do something guilty, stealing his cassock?" "Pa, do you take me for a black bear spirit?" With Guan's teasing, Yu Yingying completely relaxed. Guan walked towards his pavilion, followed closely by the Blood Prison Great Saint, who threw a disdainful glance at Yu Yingying. Yu Yingying instantly became furious and started cursing the Blood Prison Great Saint. The man and the ox began to argue while Guan, used to it, couldn't be bothered to intervene. In the following days, Xianxia stayed at the Supreme Sect, investigating the disciples' impressions of Sword Venerable Fudao. 3 days passed quickly. Xianxia returned to Medicine Valley, having understood that Sword Venerable Fudao was righteous and cared for the common people, and would not prevent him from exorcising demons. Upon arriving at Medicine Valley, he encountered Yang Jian and Li Lingtian. Yang Jian was pulling Li Lingtian out looking for a place to spar. Li Lingtian was very reluctant but did not back down verbally. Seeing the two, Shinzin's gaze was fixed. He moved to block Yang Jian. Yang Jian looked at him, his brows slightly furrowed. Even now, suppressing his cultivation level, Yang Jian couldn't hide his extraordinary presence, showing the demeanor of a prodigy. Standing beside him, Li Lingtian appeared completely overshadowed. Glaring at Xianxia, Li Lingtian said disgruntledly, "Monk, what do you want?" Xianxia spoke. "Ba, this poor monk sees that you both have remarkable auras and unique bones. Why not join our Bitter Sea Buddha sect and cultivate the great Tao?" Bitter Sea Buddha sect? Before Yang Jian could speak, Li Lingtian was already flustered. "You want us to become monks? Impossible." He was the crown prince. How could he become a monk? Monk is just a worldly term. Becoming a Buddha is the great Tao, which is eternal. Xianxia said calmly. Scratching his head, Li Lingtian thought that this guy was either crazy or genuinely capable of something. Suddenly he didn't dare to provoke him. In Medicine Valley he always encountered great cultivators, so he couldn't remain arrogant. Yang Jian said softly, "Thank you for your kind offer, but I already have a master and I don't wish to take another. Farewell." He bypassed Xianxia and walked out of the valley. Li Lingtian quickly followed. Xianxia watched their departing figures, contemplating something. Meanwhile, in the distance beneath the pavilion, Guan and Zhou Xian stood side by side, appreciating the snowy scenery. Zhou Xian noticed Xianxia and said, "That monk seems unusual. I wonder if he will cause trouble for Yang Jian." Although she had never sparred with Yang Jian, she felt he was extraordinary. Curious about how Guan had made Yang Jian so loyal, she learned that Yang Jian had been nurtured by Guan's elixir, gradually unlocking his talent, which made her admire Guan even more. Perhaps Guan's cultivation talent was ordinary, but his character deeply impressed her. Guan turned back. He is a high monk. How could he trouble Jenner? If anything, he would bring blessings, wouldn't he? Zhou Xiaoyu glanced at him. Seeing the genuine smile on his face, she believed his words. They continued chatting casually. Eventually Xianxia still found Yu Yingying. At first she was very afraid of him, but he only asked her about some matters, which gradually made her lower her guard. Although Guan's gaze wasn't fixed on Xianxia, his attention was always on him. If Yu Yingying were outside and got caught by Xianxia, he wouldn't intervene, but not in Medicine Valley. Guan thought Xianxia wouldn't harm Yu Yingying, but he was wrong. Late at night, Yu Yingying was meditating and cultivating in her room. The candlelight reflected her shadow on the wall, swaying slightly. Suddenly sensing something, she opened her eyes to see a figure entering her sight, startling her so much she instinctively crawled backward, hitting the wall. "What do you want?" Yu Yingying asked nervously, her voice loud, clearly trying to alert others. Standing by the bed, Xianxia looked down at Yu Yingying with a serious expression. "Don't waste your efforts. I have set up a barrier. No one can hear your cries, nor can you escape." Shinzin's gaze was oppressive and his tone was cold. Yu Yingying gritted her teeth and asked, "Who are you? What grudge do you have with me?" "Ba, we have no personal grudge. This poor monk can let you die knowing the reason. You are the reincarnation of a heavenly demon. Once your cultivation reaches the primordial spirit stage, you will regain memories of your past life and bring calamity to the world." Xianxia replied. Upon hearing this, Yu Yingying's expression changed dramatically, but instead of arguing she sat dazedly on the bed, looking desolate. "I see," she murmured, a bitter smile appearing on her face. She closed her eyes, preparing to accept her fate. Xianxia closed his eyes and raised his right hand, ready to end Yu Yingying's life. But suddenly, a hand pressed on Shinzin's shoulder, causing his eyes to snap open, his Buddha heart trembling. This indescribable feeling made him inexplicably fearful. Having faced countless formidable demons, even in defeat he had never felt this way. He was shocked to find himself unable to move, his mana suppressed and inactive. He immediately thought of someone. Sword Venerable Fudao. Legend had it that in a book, it was written that Sword Venerable Fudao would lightly tap the shoulder before killing someone. He had thought it was just a tale, but it turned out to be true. Outsiders are not permitted to kill within the supreme sect. Gu Ayan's voice reached Shinzinza's ears, hoarse and indifferent, carrying an undeniable authority. Next, Xianxia felt the hand on his shoulder disappear, an immense relief flooding over him. He exhaled deeply, his forehead drenched in cold sweat, unable to remain calm. In that brief moment he truly thought he would die. Looking again at Yu Yingying, his eyes were complex. Amitba. Shinzinza's voice rang out, followed by the sound of the door opening. Yu Yingying opened her eyes to see that Xianxia had vanished. Thinking about his earlier tone, it seemed he was sighing. However, Yu Yingying felt no relief from the brush with death. Instead she remained despondent. The reincarnation of a heavenly demon. Having grown up in the Star Sea congregations, she had heard tales of the heavenly demon. No wonder her father was reluctant to teach her cultivation. When he heard she was coming to the supreme sect, he was pleased, fearing she might implicate him. That night Yu Yingying leaned against the wall, lost in thought. The next morning she tidied herself up before leaving the house. Seeing the disciples of Medicine Valley exercising, their faces brimming with smiles, she felt as though she were in a different world, suddenly somewhat envious. These people might not have natural talent or prominent origins, but at least they could look forward to their future. And what about her? Born unlucky, unloved by her father, shunned by her mother, everyone saw her as a curse. She spotted Xianxia. He stood under a tree watching the disciples exercise, deep in thought. He didn't turn his head despite her gaze. Does he pity me, or is he afraid of dirtying his hands? Yu Yingying stood there stunned. After the morning exercises ended and the disciples dispersed, she still stood at the entrance. Time passed unknowingly. Guan rode the blood prison great saint past her yard and shouted, "Ms. Yu, what are you daydreaming about? If you have nothing to do, go shovel the snow with them. Since you live in my Medicine Valley, you should at least help out, right?" Yu Yingying snapped out of it, and seeing Guan's slightly displeased face, she instinctively nodded in agreement. Guan showed a satisfied expression, tossed her a look that said good thinking, and continued on his way with the blood prison great saint. At that moment, Yu Yingying came to her senses, recalling Guan's arrogant expression. She couldn't help but stomp her feet, muttering, "Making me do the chores." Although she cursed, her heart wasn't angry. She suddenly thought there's no place for her in the world. But this Medicine Valley accepted her, she's not that miserable after all. The worst-case scenario, she would never cultivate, live a few hundred years like Guan and then die. As for where she'd go in the next life, she didn't care anymore. In the next life she wouldn't be her. Chapter 278. Lord of all realms, head of immortals, Xianxia stood under the tree, also lost in thought. Unlike Yu Yingying, who had already come to terms with things, he was still puzzled. He was shocked by Sword Venerable Fudao's power and doubted his own thoughts. Based on his investigation these past few days, Sword Venerable Fudao absolutely was a great power who cared for the common people, capable of correcting a sect's behavior and reaching out to save the world. With Sword Venerable Fudao's cultivation level, he surely could see through Yu Yingying's karmic ties. Did he really not want anyone causing slaughter in the supreme sect, or did he think Yu Yingying shouldn't be killed? Shinzinza's mind was in turmoil until Nine-Finger Divine Lord came to Medicine Valley to play Go, and only then was he awakened by him. "Why are you in such a state? Did you encounter Sword Venerable Fudao?" Nine-Finger Divine Lord asked with a smile, standing before Xianxia. Xianxia closed his eyes and uttered a Amitba. The smile faded from Nine-Finger Divine Lord's face. He frowned, his expression serious, and said in a deep voice, "You really dared to act? Are you courting death? I've heard that Divine Strange Ghost King Heaven Unpredictable was directly crushed by Sword Venerable Fudao, and it is said that Heaven Unpredictable had already reached the pinnacle of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm." Xianxia still kept his eyes closed, seemingly indifferent. Nine-Finger Divine Lord noticed his left hand trembling within his sleeve. This kid wasn't scared half to death, was he? Nine-Finger Divine Lord thought to himself and suddenly found it amusing. It was rare to see him this frightened. "Come, let's play Go. There is wisdom in black and white that can help you understand." Nine-Finger Divine Lord pulled Xianxia along, chattering as they walked. I have to say, Guan does have a certain divine nature. To create such a profound game of Go, either he has an extraordinary master behind him, or he was guided in his dreams by an immortal. Xianxia in a daze did not really listen. However, in the following days through playing Go, the anxiety and confusion in his mind began to dissipate, and he also came to understand Nine-Fingered Divine Lord's words. This game of Go was indeed extraordinary. The cold winter finally passed, and the spring festival of the Supreme Sect came around once more. It was worth mentioning that, through the promotion of Li Xiandao, people across the world had begun to celebrate the spring festival. In the third Medicine Valley, Li Lingtian stood beside Yang Jian, his hands on his hips as he looked at Xianxia under the distant tree, frowning. Why hasn't that monk left yet? Is he planning to stay here? Yang Jian was making lanterns beside him and replied nonchalantly, "He can stay if he wants, it's none of your business. My master hasn't chased you away either." Li Lingtian glared and said, "I'm different. I am your master's junior brother, and your master has the best relationship with my brother, the emperor." Yang Jian suddenly looked at him and asked, "By the way, have you heard from your emperor brother? He is cultivating among the Star Sea congregations and should be acquainted with An Hao, right?" "No contact yet, but he does have a good relationship with An Hao. Both are already legendary geniuses in the Supreme Sect. Speaking of which, I haven't seen them in person. Perhaps my emperor brother doesn't even know of my existence." Li Lingtian replied. When he mentioned Li Ya, a trace of envy entered his tone. "You could follow in your emperor brother's footsteps. I've heard that the Taizong dynasty and the Star Sea congregations have also established a friendly cooperation. Your father, the emperor, must have some way." "Forget it, it's better to cultivate with you. To be honest, I think you are the strongest genius in the world. My emperor brother and An Hao are nothing compared to you." Li Lingtian looked at Yang Jian seriously and said, expressing his genuine thoughts. In this lifetime he admired Yang Jian the most. Not only was his talent unparalleled, but he also had the patience to cultivate diligently, avoiding the pursuit of empty fame. "There's no way I'm the strongest, and I also have a goal to pursue." Yang Jian shook his head and laughed. "A goal to pursue?" Li Lingtian was immediately intrigued and began to ask, but unfortunately Yang Jian would not say. Elsewhere, Guan approached Xianxia. At this moment, Xianxia was sitting on the ground, engrossed in Journey to the West. "Daoist friend, the festival is approaching. Would you like to join us?" Guan asked with a smile. Xianxia came to his senses, quickly got up and saluted Guan, saying, "Amitabha, thank you for the invitation. As a humble monk, I dare not refuse. What can I do to help?" Guan waved his hand with a smile. "You are a guest, there's no need for you to do anything. Of course, if you are in the mood and have time to guide the disciples in the valley, I would be grateful." Xianxia couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, "Benefactor, what do you wish to learn?" "Not for me, but for the disciples in the valley. Doesn't the benefactor seek the Mahayana Buddhist teachings and the immortal destiny?" "Me? Forget it. My current life is pretty good. I don't want to go out fighting and killing. I have a senior brother named Li Ya, who holds an immortal path supreme treasure. He's incredibly powerful, but unfortunately only I know the hardships he faces behind the glory. I'm timid by nature and dare not kill people, so it's best for me to stay in Medicine Valley." Guan laughed freely, causing Xianxia to look at him with admiration. They chatted for a while before Guan took his leave. Xianxia watched his departing figure, filled with deep emotions. This Medicine Valley, though small, was truly fascinating. There were great cultivators who had achieved unparalleled heights, extraordinarily talented juniors, ill-fated disaster stars, and a valley master who had seen through life. If he were to cultivate Buddhist teachings here, it might bring him greater enlightenment. However, unfortunately he still had to head to the sea-breaking rift. If he could survive and return, he could cultivate here for hundreds of years. Xianxia silently thought, no longer caring about eliminating Yu Yingying. With a great power like Sword Venerable Fudao watching over her, she shouldn't cause any trouble. In the palace, An Hao stood up and saluted his master, Sage Fuchen. Sage Fuchen looked at An Hao with a sigh. "Hao, I didn't expect you to have such a formidable master. As your teacher, I am basking in your glory." He had already learned about the incident where Heaven Unpredictable attacked the Star Sea congregations, and he was shocked. He didn't expect An Hao to have such a significant background. Master, you have taught me to cultivate and taken care of me. I will always remember your kindness. And Hao replied seriously. Ever since Sword Venerable Fudao intervened, and Hao's status within the Star Sea congregations had completely changed. Often, great cultivators visited him, showing care and concern, and even some noble families sought to introduce female disciples to him as Daoist friends, though he politely declined. And Hao already had someone in his heart, but to him, nothing compared to the immortal cultivation path, so he had severed that relationship. His master saved him from the jaws of a monster, not to let him indulge in love. He must reach the pinnacle of the immortal path and not let his master down. Sage Fuchen smiled with satisfaction and then began to talk about the sea-breaking rift. In the sea-breaking rift, more divine exotic resentful ghosts were appearing, and the 9 divine exotic ghost kings were gathering. The great sects were preparing to launch a joint attack on the divine exotic realm, and he had returned for this reason. As he listened to his master describe the various bizarre and wonderful sights within the divine exotic realm, and Hao became interested, wanting to explore it himself. However, he ultimately suppressed the urge, knowing that time was precious and he had to devote all his time to cultivation to become capable as soon as possible. If this great battle goes smoothly, the world-destroying sea tide will not erupt, which is an immense achievement. Sage Fuchen said with burning eyes. Achievement? But what use was that? Sage Fuchen began to introduce the Holy Court, which broadened and Hao's horizons as he learned there was a ruling power in the mortal world. The land of 10,000 immortals, it sounded imposing. When Sage Fuchen spoke of the Lord of the Holy Court, Xianxia, and Hao fell into endless imagination. The Lord of the Holy Court ruling the mortal world, how powerful must that be? Wouldn't that be akin to the Heavenly Emperor in the Investiture of the Gods, or the Jade Emperor in Journey to the West? And Hao's name also had Hao in it. Could he not become the Lord of all realms, the head of immortals one day? A flame of unparalleled ambition ignited in Hao's heart. Since he was on the path of immortal cultivation, how could he not strive for the supreme throne? Time flew by and in the blink of an eye 12 years had passed. In the summer, in a city, Guan walked on the street in a green robe, accompanied by a woman clad in white, with a hat and veil concealing her face. This woman was Zhi Xiaoyu. Why come to this city? Zhi Xiaoyu curiously asked. At the beginning of the year she had told Guan she wanted to go out and see the mortal world and comprehend the Tao, hoping Guan could accompany her. Initially, Guan did not agree, but she kept bringing it up and he eventually gave in. One of my junior brothers lives in this city. Guan answered, then recounted his acquaintance with Xiaochuan. Zhi Xiaoyu listened attentively, her heart touched. Indeed, not everyone had her extraordinary talent. Most people's spirit root qualifications were average, just like those in the Third Medicine Valley. Xiaochuan's decision to give up the immortal path deeply moved her. Of course, she only admired Xiaochuan's determination. She would never give up on immortal cultivation. They chatted as they walked. They entered an inn and went to a window seat on the second floor. Zhi Xiaoyu asked, "If Xiaochuan passes away first, will you be sad?" Guan was already a core formation realm cultivator, certain to outlive Xiaochuan. Guan smiled. "If he leaves without regret, I won't be sad. Even if he passes, I will always hold a place for him in my heart." Zhi Xiaoyu nodded. Guan teased, "If I pass away, will you be sad?" Zhi Xiaoyu didn't console him but thought through the question seriously and replied, "I will feel sad, but it won't affect my emotions. I too will eventually reach the end. We will both enter reincarnation, it's just a matter of who goes first." "You have a clear perspective, not disappointing my teachings over the years. What have you taught me?" "My words, my actions, they influence you." "True." Zhi Xiaoyu nodded in agreement, making Guan smile more broadly. This girl was so easily tricked. She was even more fun than in their past lives. Just as Guan was about to speak, a sound of breaking through the air came from the sky. "Make way! Make way!" A rude voice echoed above the city, drawing Guan and Zhi Xiaoyu's attention. They turned to see a sea dragon flying low, stirring up debris along its path. On the sea dragon's head stood a young boy. Chapter 279. The Remarkable Pan. And looking at the sea dragon, Guan felt that its aura was somewhat familiar, so he paid closer attention. "Ah! Isn't this the same aura as that of Sky Dragon?" "But it certainly isn't Sky Dragon." Sky Dragon is currently serving as the holy beast of ancient sky sect, and according to Gu Anus' divine sense, that fellow is still snoozing. Guan began to probe the sea dragon's causality and quickly understood its origins. It turned out to be a snake demon that had acquired the true blood of Sky Dragon and had just shed its old skin to transform into a sea dragon, leaping forward in talent. Gu Anus' eyes shifted to the youth sitting atop the sea dragon's head and executed a lifespan detection. Su Jin Foundation Establishment Realm, 9 layers 32/350/3080, a lifespan limited to 3,080 years in the past, would surely be considered a rare talent, but in the present world, it could only be said to be talented though not top tier. Su Jin, dressed in white robes, splendid and regal, donning an intricate hair crown, looked vibrant and energetic, appearing to be only 16 or 17 years old. The sea dragon beneath his feet, 10 zhang long, stirred up a strong wind as it flew low, lifting tiles off buildings, palaces, and even lanterns and sunshades off the streets, causing much chaos wherever it passed. Ji Xiaoyu frowned as she watched, raising her cup, preparing to take action. Guan held her hand, smiling. "Don't be hasty." Ji Xiaoyu turned to him and said, "This is a city of mortals. Though there are some cultivators, they are few and far between. How could they stop that?" Before she could finish, the sound of a sword being drawn echoed throughout the city. Immediately after, the sea dragon let out a piercing scream as blood gushed from its spine, plummeting towards the street. The commoners on the street scurried away in panic, while Su Jin atop the sea dragon's head was flustered. He quickly leaped off, landing on a nearby rooftop. He had just landed when a sword was placed against his neck, causing his pupils to dilate in terror, and beads of cold sweat to stream down his face. "Who are you? What do you want?" Su Jin asked tremulously, followed by a voice behind him. "So brazen and reckless, are you trying to disregard Taikang's laws?" Inside the inn, Guan withdrew his gaze and looked at Ji Xiaoyu, smiling. "See? The one who had taken action was a nascent soul realm cultivator who practiced the art of concealing their aura, which is why Ji Xiaoyu had not noticed." Ji Xiaoyu took a deep look at the sword cultivator and then turned to Guan. "Today's emperor truly acts decisively. I thought his laws aimed at cultivators were just for show, but I was wrong. They are indeed enforced. That sword cultivator's aura is not simple. The moment he drew his sword, the sword intent was strong." Guan said, "Nowadays the Taizong dynasty could be described as a place where dragons hide and tigers lie dormant. Anywhere you could find a great cultivator. But we both have core formation realm cultivation. Why could you sense his presence and I could not? How could you ask that? Shall I tell you that you are not as good as me? Please, I am at least 156 years older than you. I heard you used to be a golden list genius but always said your talents were lacking. It seems now that you might have been playing the fool." "You're right about that. I truly am, in fact, an immortal living incognito in the mortal world." "Hee hee." Ji Xiaoyu gave Guan a glance, but she was also amused by him. The two continued to drink and chat, no longer paying attention to Su Jin and the sea dragon. In the end, both Su Jin and the sea dragon were taken away by the nascent soul sword cultivator, to the cheers of the commoners. Over the following days, Guan and Ji Xiaoyu strolled through the city. They even visited Xiaochuan's residence but only stood on the rooftop to look without disturbing Xiaochuan. Now that Xiaochuan had settled down with a family and children, his life was complete. After 2 days in the city, they left to visit other places. Because Guan was concerned about medicinal herbs, this journey only lasted half a month, which was quite fulfilling for Ji Xiaoyu. With Gu Anna's company, she witnessed the vicissitudes of life. Gu An shared his life experiences to resolve her doubts, benefiting her greatly. Time flew by. At the end of summer, Guan brought Yang Jian to Immortal Seeking Island. Ever since his visit to the divine exotic realm, Immortal Seeking Island was no longer invaded by divine exotic resentful ghosts. There were still many at sea but not as numerous as before and mostly acted alone. Just on entering the city, Guan and Yang Jian heard the cultivators discussing the battle at the sea-breaking rift. This battle had been raging for more than a year. Shen Xinzi, who sought to kill Yu Yingying before, also joined the battle, representing the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Those divine exotic ghost kings are truly troublesome, immortal and indestructible. Indeed, it's said that more than 1,000 loose immortals have fallen in the sea-breaking rift over the years, and heaven knows how many cultivators below the loose immortal realm have perished. Falling is not to be feared, but to become a divine exotic resentful ghost after falling and then turn against us, that's the true horror. Who knows how well ever resolve this cataclysm? The Bitter Sea Buddha sect is indeed capable of delivering the divine exotic resentful ghosts, but they are too few in number. The most formidable divine monk is Xianxia, who has encountered a curse and his fate is unknown. Upon hearing Xianxin's name, Yang Jian looked towards Gu and conveyed through psychic transmission. Yes, that's the monk who visited Medicine Valley before. Yang Jian had sensed that Xianxia was extraordinary, but he did not expect the monk to be so well known. Soon Hu Shaojian arrived and greeted them as usual, leading them to purchase medicinal herbs. Predecessor, I heard that Tang Hai and others encountered danger in the sea-breaking rift and their fate is unclear, Hu Shaojian said cautiously. Guan replied calmly, everyone has their own destiny. Different choices lead to different fates. As immortal cultivators they would have been prepared. Hu Shaojian nodded, contemplating the might of the divine exotic ghost king. Currently, aside from Sword Venerable Fudao, no second individual or demon has been able to suppress a divine exotic ghost king alone. The longer the disaster caused by the sea-breaking rift lasts, the more it confirms the strength of Sword Venerable Fudao. Although Sword Venerable Fudao has not joined in the battle within the sea-breaking rift, many believe that the reduction in the number of divine exotic resentful ghosts at sea and the retreat of divine exotic ghost kings back into the rift is related to Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan remained silent while Yang Jian engaged in brisk conversation with Hu Shaojian. By the way, there's a popular book at sea called Journey to the West. Have you read it? Hu Shaojian suddenly recalled and asked. Yang Jian nodded. I have. What about it? He was moved, feeling proud that his master was not only profound in cultivation but also preeminent in talent, for his book to spread so far. Guan was also surprised as he secretly calculated. It turned out that the Star Sea congregations played a significant role, and another person was also helping to promote Journey to the West, who was none other than Xianxia. Interesting. Guan wasn't afraid of trouble. Now he had the power to protect himself. Of course, it would be better if no one disturbed him. As Hu Shaojian brought up Journey to the West, he began to enthusiastically explain that the book had spread throughout the seas, praised by many sects. Besides those cultivators who were always in seclusion, most of those active at sea had read it. Some felt that the immortal divine world depicted in the book was fascinating, others thought the book reflected reality, and some even considered it a history book. Investiture of the Gods wasn't as popular as Journey to the West, but some, like Hu Shaojian, would read Investiture of the Gods after learning about Journey to the West. Through Journey to the West, Hu Shaojian also mentioned the great sects and cultivators of the seas, leaving Yang Jian in awe. How vast was this world, really? 2 ancient hours later, the master and disciple duo returned to the supreme sect. Walking through the woods, Yang Jian became more talkative. Master, between Impermanence Tian and the divine exotic ghost king, who is stronger? Yang Jian curiously asked. He had heard from Hu Shaojian about Sword Venerable Fudao appearing within the Star Sea congregations to confront a divine exotic ghost king, so he was intrigued. Hu Shaojian didn't know the details due to his lower status. He did not know the name of that divine exotic ghost king nor why Sword Venerable Fudao acted, but he was aware of the event. Although Yang Jian was no longer disturbed by Impermanence Tian, he still felt an inherent pressure, thinking that he would inevitably face him one day. Guan casually replied, As your master I am also unclear. When you face him in the future you will know. I hope he comes later rather than sooner. With his level of cultivation, what he calls soon might be in hundreds or thousands of years, so don't worry too much. Right, I will definitely not slack off. Yang Jian was full of fighting spirit and he actually had another question he wanted to ask. That was, what realm had his master reached? His master claimed to be a loose immortal, but from what Hu Shaojian said, Sword Venerable Fudao obviously seemed much stronger than a loose immortal. He also wanted to ask about the cultivation realm of that fellow senior brother. But he dared not ask. If the master did not say it, there must be a reason. Inside the palace, and Hao slowly opened his eyes, exhaling a long breath of foul air. A figure suddenly appeared beside the pool, none other than Xiao. Xiao looked at Hao and marveled, void crossing realm 9 layers. Impressive young man. To have such cultivation at just over 100 years old is indeed terrifying. Although my sect has invested a lot in you, you have absorbed it all so quickly, truly proving your talent is unmatched in the world. And Hao looked at him and said, above the void-crossing realm are the unification and mystic heart. To reach the Mahayana realm by 500 would not be considered quick. Zhou Xian rolled his eyes and said, with your current pace, reaching the Mahayana realm by 500 would be a breeze. I even suspect that you could achieve nirvana before 500. Your innate talent is unimaginable. As he said this, his tone also revealed a hint of envy. And Hao shook his head. My master has taken another disciple. He says his talent is not inferior to mine, and honestly I fear he might catch up with me. Mentioning sword Venerable Fudao, Zhou Xian immediately sat cross-legged, curious. Who exactly is your master and which sect is he from? Don't tell me he's from the Supreme Sect. With such cultivation, if he's not from the Holy Court, he must be from one of the mortal world's leading Qi fortune sects. I truly don't know, and Hao admitted helplessly. Even if he did know, he wouldn't reveal it. Zhou Xian glanced at him and then pulled out several books from within his robes, offering, take a look at Journey to the West, it's also from the Supreme Sect. This book has become wildly popular at sea, and it's even made me consider another trip to the Supreme Sect. Journey to the West? And Hao looked at the book in Qi Jiaxiu's hands. He had already heard about the book, written by Pan and of the Supreme Sect. He knew who Pan An was, his junior sister was even under Pan An's mentorship. And Hao couldn't help but recall his first encounter with Guan when they witnessed LV Baiyan returning to peak form, exhibiting a formidable cultivation level. But Guan's cultivation and talents seemed so ordinary, and such an ordinary person had managed to spread his fame all the way to the seas. Truly remarkable. Chapter 280 Destiny. After returning to the Third Medicine Valley with Yang Jian, Guan did not immediately go upstairs but instead found an Xin to inquire after her health with particular concern for her cultivation practice. Enzin's maximum lifespan was 230 years. She could still wait for several decades before lifting the restrictions on her cultivation level. Over the years, Guan had also given her a number of elixirs. She might even surpass Yilan. Master, have you heard any news of my elder disciple brother and how recently? An Xian suddenly asked. Although it had been a long time since she had last seen An Hao, their relationship had not become estranged. After all, they had grown up together since childhood and even experienced life and death. She knew that she and An Hao belonged to two different worlds in the future, but occasionally she could not help but be concerned for him. Knowing he was safe was enough. Guan picked up a teacup from the table and replied, he's doing quite well. He has now become the foremost talent of the Star Sea congregations and has cultivated the awe-inspiring flame primordial treasure body. This intelligence had been mentioned to him by LV Baiyan before, so now when he spoke of it he wouldn't reveal his true cultivation level. An Xin listened intently, her face brimming with smiles. She didn't feel the slightest envy for An Hao's achievements, even though both had started immortal cultivation on the same day. The gap in their talents was simply too large. Sometimes she even doubted whether she truly knew An Hao, and so she would not mention knowing An Hao in her daily interactions with others. Now things were going well. She lived carefree within Medicine Valley. Though there was no hope of pursuing the immortal path, at least her days were fulfilling and interesting. After Guan finished speaking, An Xin propped her cheeks with both hands and laughed. My elder disciple brother is truly impressive. It's hard to imagine what kind of great figure he will become in the future. Guan smiled and said, then practice hard and strive to see a further future. An Xin nodded and then brought up the white spirit rat, her face filled with indignation. As the white spirit rat grew stronger in cultivation, it became increasingly difficult for her to control, and now it would only listen to Guan inside Medicine Valley. It was practically a tyrant, often playing tricks on the disciples. Of course, the white spirit rat was just mischievous and wouldn't harm the disciples, which was also the reason Guan couldn't be bothered to discipline it. There was one time when the white spirit rat accidentally injured An Xin and was severely beaten by Guan. It never dared to hurt people again. Guan chatted with An Xin about the trivial matters of Medicine Valley. After spending the first half of the day concerned with the significant affairs of the world, he now talked about the small matters of the valley, a contrast he found quite amusing. Days passed one by one. Autumn winds blew into Medicine Valley. Inside the house, Guan leaned on a chair holding a book in his hands. It was about talismans. Now and then he would read some books on Daoist sorcery. With his current state, most of the Daoist sorcery techniques of the mortal world seem simple to him. The reason geniuses enjoy reading is that being able to understand brings enjoyment. Suddenly, Guan's brow furrowed. Li Ya was tapping into the power of divine exotic city. Wasn't Li Ya in retreat, cultivating with the Star Sea congregations? Immediately, Guan closed his eyes, discovering that Li Ya was in fact in the sea-breaking rift, currently being suppressed by a divine exotic ghost king. Li Ya was not alone. Surrounding him were many cultivators from diverse sections. Even if Li Ya possessed the power of divine exotic city, he could not possibly defeat the divine exotic ghost king. The power of an immortal path supreme treasure was indeed formidable but correlated with the cultivation level of the user. The stronger the realm, the more prominently the supreme treasure's power would display. Guan had no intention of intervening. As long as Li Ya did not die, it was normal for him to suffer a bit. Traversing the immortal cultivation world, who could expect smooth sailing? Yet he sensed another presence and could not help but lament the terrifying power of fate. In the divine exotic realm, within a realm of minor heaven and earth. Beneath a crimson sky, dust flew across the land like dragons and phoenixes contorting, while innumerable divine exotic resentful ghosts swirled like moths, densely packed, enough to make one's scalp tingle. A divine exotic ghost king stood proudly in the sky, his countenance fierce with symmetrical bloodstains on his cheeks and his long white hair fluttering like flames. With 6 arms brandishing different weapons, he stood atop a 1,000-meter-high ghost beast, suspended in midair. This beast too floated in the air, its lion-tiger body, leopard-like head, and 3 tails stirring clouds and mist with every sway. Looking along the direction of the divine exotic ghost king's gaze, one could see beneath the swirling dust a massive city. It was divine exotic city. The city spanned 100 miles, standing against the relentless tide of divine exotic resentful ghosts. Inside, thousands of cultivators gazed up at the sky with expressions of anger, fear, and hatred. Atop the tallest spire in the city, Li Ya in black stood on the summit, with a pitch-black figure atop his shoulder, the divine exotic immortal spirit. Li Ya had furrowed brows, his expression stern. Divine exotic city has actually fallen into the hands of a minor immortal cultivation of the divinity transformation realm. Boy, aren't you feeling overwhelmed? Strong as divine exotic city is, how can your frail body exert its divine power? The divine exotic ghost king sneered. His name was Zhen Ludao, and with his cultivation of the 9 layers of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, he viewed Li Ya as no different from an ant. Hearing his words, Li Ya remained silent. Arguing was meaningless. How to survive this calamity was his concern. His hands hidden within his sleeves clenched tightly, and he began to bleed from his nose. Several cultivators in the city noticed this scene, as did Xianxia, who was meditating on a street. His brows furrowed at the sight. Xianxia looked off into the distance at Zhen Ludao, struggle flickering in his eyes. After taunting for a while and receiving no response from Li Ya, Zhen Ludao became annoyed. Lifting an arm, in his hand he held a black mirror which swirled with dark mist. A figure leapt from the mirror, quickly growing to nearly Zhen Ludao's size. It was a white-haired man. Li Ya's pupils dilated at the sight, his face shifting with various emotions, ultimately contorting in rage, eyes filled with fury. "You dare to turn him into," Li Ya said through gritted teeth. His aura erupted suddenly with wisps of blood seeping from his pores. Divine exotic immortal spirit, mobilize the mightiest power of divine exotic city. I will kill him. Li Ya roared inwardly, unable to contain his rage. The white-haired man was none other than Zhang Buku. At this moment, Zhang Buku had transformed into a divine exotic resentful ghost. His clothes tattered, his expression cold. He looked down upon Li Ya without the slightest emotional fluctuation in his eyes. As Zhen Ludao watched Li Ya rage, he burst into laughter, saying, "I merely caught a snippet of karma from you all. I hadn't realized he meant so much to you. How about it, care to keep him company? This is the chance of immortality." Li Ya didn't answer. Instead, he turned to look at the divine exotic immortal spirit on his shoulder and shouted, "Didn't you hear me? I want you to kill him." The divine exotic immortal spirit shuddered with fright and hastily invoked even stronger power. A thunderous rumbling. Divine exotic city trembled. The protective light that enveloped the entire city burst forth with countless rainbows of light, all aimed at Zhen Ludao. The three-tailed ghost beast let out a ferocious roar, the very firmament shook, and it forcibly blocked the power from divine exotic city. Li spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes bleeding. He clenched his teeth and said, "Continue." The divine exotic immortal spirit hesitated for a moment and then gestured. The power of those light rainbows surged, overbearing the howls of the three-tailed ghost beast, drawing ever closer to it. Zhen Ludao was taken aback and became interested. Li bled from his 7 orifices, his spine began to bend, but his gaze remained fixated above, wishing he could tear Zhen Ludao to pieces. Amitofo. Layman Li, there's no need for further effort, striving in vain is useless. The voice of Xianxia suddenly rang through the heavens, serious in tone. A golden light rose from within the city, piercing through the protective light and going straight through the neck of the three-tailed ghost beast, which despite struggling instinctively, could not dissipate the golden light. Xianxia looked at Zhen Ludao, his eyes flickering with interest. The golden light unveiled a long golden staircase with Xianxia ascending from the bottom. His body radiated with Buddhist light, and the prayer beads in his hand were aflame. Li couldn't help but look at him surprised. "Layman Li, you are still young. Let this humble monk be the one to sacrifice. As the saying goes in the journey to the west by the womb of the earth Bodhisattva, if I don't enter hell, who will? Do not lose your sanity over the passing of an old friend. Keep this rage in your heart and let it fuel your fighting spirit." Xianxia spoke firmly. As his words fell, he stepped out from the light of divine exotic city. His Buddhist light surged wildly, engulfing Zhen Ludao and the three-tailed ghost beast like a tidal wave. In the eyes of Li Ya and the cultivators in the city, a giant golden prayer bead phantom appeared in the sky, trapping Zhen Ludao and his mount within with an inconceivable method. The giant prayer bead phantom suddenly vanished, and with it the figures of Zhen Ludao and the three-tailed ghost beast. Around the world, the divine exotic resentful ghosts came to a halt, and after a moment of silence, they quickly dispersed, like fish scattering invisibly into the void. Li Ya then knelt on the summit, slowly bowing his head, murmuring, "Zhong, no." Before he could finish, he collapsed. The world grew dim by the seashore. Zhen Ludao dragged Shenzin's head, pulling his body across the sand. He journeyed to the divine exotic life tablet and tossed Xianxia to the ground. He complained, "Realm Master, why won't you let me eat him? Just because he's from the Bitter Sea Buddha sect? Do you really need to be so cautious?" The voice of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm came out from the Divine Exotic Life Tablet. "He has significant karma. You must not kill him. Also, you may not kill anyone with close karma to Zhang Buku." Zhen Ludao's demeanor changed, a sudden flare of anger emerging as he glared. "Why? The being called Destroyer of Heavens has personally requested that I protect Zhang Buku." Hearing this, Zhen Ludao paused, then sank into silence. Taking a deep breath, he said no more and turned to leave. Once he disappeared, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm emerged from the life tablet, approached Xianxia and looked down, murmuring, "A reincarnation of a heavenly demon? What exactly is the Bitter Sea Buddha sect scheming?" He lifted his right hand and began healing Xianxia with his own divine power. Meanwhile, back in Medicine Valley, Guan withdrew his attention. The Master of Divine Exotic Realm was sensible. If he dared to cause trouble, risk or not, Guan would have had to intervene. But the thought of Zhang Buku becoming a divine exotic resentful ghost made Guan sigh. He couldn't constantly watch over Zhang Buku. The last time he detected Zhang Buku in the divine exotic realm, Zhang Buku had already transformed into a resentful ghost, fortunately retaining a sliver of will. If the Master of Divine Exotic Realm were to be obliterated, then all the divine exotic resentful ghosts would vanish as well. That meant Zhang Buku was now tied to the fate of the Realm Master. Chapter 281. The Enlightened Master. Guan. 2 years had passed since Li Ya and Zhang Buku had met. In those 2 years, the seas continued to surge with activity. Countless cultivators and demons rushed into the sea-breaking rift. Such strife never ceased. Some found their fateful breakthroughs while others fell with regret. The Supreme Sect had been peaceful, with the majority of its disciples diligently pursuing their cultivation. Days in Medicine Valley were even more serene. On this day, Guan arrived early in Mystic Valley, waiting for someone who was soon to appear. Near noontime, dressed in black, Li Ye descended from the sky, landing below the pavilion. This time he didn't enter through the window but stood beneath it, gazing at Guan's windowsill, silent for a long time without taking a step forward. The blood prison great saint lying on the ground watched him with a peculiar look in its eyes. It could feel that his mood was very low, and his entire being seemed dispirited and lost. "Senior brother Li, why have you come?" Lu Jujia hurried over, asking excitedly. Li Ye snapped out of his trance and looked towards him, managing a strained smile. "I came to see your senior brother Gu. He's upstairs. Usually he doesn't spend much time in Mystic Valley, but today he's been here all morning. So he was waiting for you after all," Lu Jujia remarked with a sigh. He could obviously tell something was off with Li Ye, hence his words. Li Ye nodded at him, then ascended the stairs. Upon reaching the second floor, he pushed open the door and entered. Guan, who was seated in a chair, put down the Supreme Secret Records book he had been reading and looked at Li Ye, exclaiming with surprise, "Senior brother Li, what brings you here?" Looking at Guan, Li Ye's eyes suddenly reddened. He closed the door behind him, then walked over to the desk, clenching his fists tightly and gritting his teeth. Guan's smile faded as he asked anxiously, "What's wrong? What happened?" Li Ye dared not meet Guan's gaze because Zhang Buku had once said that Guan was his only senior relative. Zhang Buku. Li Ye started with difficulty. "What happened to him?" Guan stood up abruptly. Li Ye took a deep breath and recounted what had happened to Zhang Buku. After listening, Guan collapsed in his chair, looking just as dispirited, deepening Li Ye's distress. "Wait, you said he became a divine, exotic, resentful ghost, which means he's still here, isn't he?" Guan asked urgently, as if grasping at a thought. Li Ye turned his head and replied, "He's still here, but becoming a divine, exotic, resentful ghost means he's no longer who he was. He's become a monster that devours living spirits, never to know freedom." Guan countered, "Did you see him do that?" Li Ye froze for a moment, then looked at him. Guan's expression became calm as he said, "Buku has always had a tough life, carrying the burden of half of the demon clan's bloodline, but he has managed to survive till now. Why can't he turn misfortune into safety this time?" "But," Li Ye stammered. "Senior brother, this incident isn't your fault. He chose to venture into the sea-breaking rift himself. Don't carry too much burden. Besides, I truly believe he can turn danger into safety." "Junior brother Gu," Li Ye began. "Look at you. If Buku saw you like this, he would surely laugh at you. Aren't you brothers who have gone through life and death together? Do you intend to join him in death? You must have faith in him. He will definitely be able to turn danger into safety. If you don't cultivate diligently, you might even fall behind him. After every great adversity comes great fortune. Don't underestimate him." Guan said with a smile, a look of anticipation on his face. Li Ye knew Guan was comforting him, but he couldn't help but think, what if Zhang Buku truly could overcome this peril? Guan invited him to sit down and inquired about his experiences over the years. Li Ye began to share his life in the past years, and Guan interjected with questions from time to time. The more he did so, the more ashamed Li Ye felt. Zhang Buku was gone. The pain in junior brother Gu's heart must have been no less intense than his, considering junior brother Gu also carried the emotional weight of Zhang Chuanqiu. And yet junior brother Gu still comforted him. A divine, exotic immortal spirit appeared on Li Ye's shoulder without him noticing. It looked at Guan, blinked slyly, but Li Ye missed this moment. The two brothers talked for a long time. Until dusk, Li Ye stood up. He looked at Guan and said, "I've come back this time just to tell you about this. Thank you, junior brother Gu. I won't give up hope. I'll cultivate even harder and will save Zhang Buku sooner or later." Determination colored his face, and his eyes blazed with fighting spirit. Guan naturally encouraged him. And so Li Ye left. He didn't exit through the window but walked down the stairs. Guan did not accompany him. Li Ye stopped in front of the blood prison great saint, turned to look at it and said, "Oxhead, I swear I won't let anyone I care about end up in danger again. And your master, I will protect him too." With those words, he leaped into the sky and vanished into the horizon. The blood prison great saint rolled its eyes and muttered, "Crazy in the head. Who's protecting who? And why are you telling me? Am I your father?" A month after Li Ya's departure, another person returned. It was the monk Xianxia. He made his way to the third medicine valley. He paused at the entrance to the valley, somewhat dazed by the sight of its inhabitants sweeping, watering the soil, playing Go, painting and playfully chasing each other. Everything seemed so harmonious. For some reason, the moment he returned here, Xianxia inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief. The gloom in his heart began to dissipate. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the valley. Soon after he saw Yu Yingying. She saw him too and instinctively wanted to avoid him, but he sent her a message asking her to halt. Xianxia approached her with a serious expression. Yu Yingying nervously asked, "What do you want?" "I haven't harmed anyone." Xianxia closed his eyes and said, "Amitabha benefactor, the monk has come to apologize. I was indeed rash and overly stubborn and judgmental before. It's true that everyone in the world may accuse you, but this monk cannot. I apologize. Henceforth I will not bother you again." He put his palms together and bowed in apology. Yu Yingying was stunned and rather perplexed. Before she could ask any questions, Xianxia turned and left. Watching his retreating figure, Yu Yingying muttered to herself, "What has he been through these years? Feels like he's been struck down." She had always been quite afraid of Xianxia, but after hearing his words just now, she strangely felt sympathy for him, rather than joy for her own sake. Shaking her head, she decided not to dwell on it any further. Whatever the case, she had to stay away from that monk. What if he went crazy again one day? Xianxia arrived at the Go-playing area where still dozens of people gathered. He saw the Valley Master Guan approaching and nodded to each other as a greeting. Then they stood behind the crowd to watch the game. Suddenly, Xianxia had a notion and looked towards Guan. Stepping towards him, he whispered, "Valley Master, might I have a word in private?" Guan glanced at him, then nodded. "Let's talk in my room," Guan said. Xianxia had sacrificed himself to save Li Ya and the whole town, which improved Guan's opinion of him. Although the monk was stubborn when it came to action, he dared to face danger, genuinely caring for the lives of others, not just paying lip service. The nine-fingered divine lord who was playing Go noticed their figures. He smirked, withdrew his gaze and continued his game, exclaiming, "You really play a lousy game of Go. Even the country children outside the supreme sect could outplay this mess. No, let that cow play, it would do better than you." The blood prison great saint, who heard this from afar, was infuriated, but he held back. After all, Guan had once said the nine-fingered divine lord was an immortal who had just concealed his cultivation level. "Just keep playing. Better you don't cultivate anymore. Once I release my cultivation level, it'll make you my mount and turn you into a toad." The blood prison great saint thought to himself, and this brought him pleasure. He immediately cheered up. Elsewhere, Guan led Xianxia upstairs. Xianxia took the initiative to close the door. After inviting him to sit down, Guan began making tea. While waiting, Xianxia looked around at the multitude of books in the room, even noticing his favorite, Journey to the West. Having Journey to the West, there made him feel even more favorably towards Guan. Guan placed the hot tea in front of him, then sat down smiling and asked, "What brings Daoist friend to seek a discussion?" Xianxia took a deep breath and said, "Benefactor, it's like this. I have a good friend who has spent his life detesting evil and seeking to vanquish demons to save the suffering masses. However, he suddenly discovered he was a reincarnation of a demon. What should he do?" Classic, "I have a friend" scenario. Guan pondered and said, "Is the relationship between past and present lives so important? What sin cannot be washed away even through reincarnation? Why should he fret? Why not just continue walking the path he believes in?" "But he truly is a demon," Xianxia began. "So what? Are demons absolutely bad and are humans definitely good? Do you really think you should distance yourself from this friend?" "Daoist friend, if that's the case, then I have to speak up. It's disappointing that monks who have supposedly transcended worldly matters are so caught up in appearances." Guan began an impassioned critique of Xianxia. His inclination to give advice had been thoroughly roused. Xianxia did not get angry and listened intently. Guan, who had invented the game of Go, must have extraordinary insight, and Xianxia had previously felt that Guan's perspective on life was truly open-minded. His moral standing was undoubtedly higher than his own. Cultivation isn't all about increasing one's cultivation level. Guan talked for a while, feeling refreshed once he had finished. It didn't matter to him whether Xianxia took the advice to heart. He simply felt good about having aired his views. Xianxia, deep in thought, asked, if one lays down the butcher's knife, can they truly become a Buddha on the spot? Guan replied, not without irritation, how can that be possible? That's just being unreasonable. Sins need to be washed away by good deeds. Besides, your friend has not done anything evil in this life and has even saved many people, right? Xianxia nodded, his previously furrowed brows finally relaxing. He began to ponder. Guan did not disturb him and simply picked up a book to read. The room fell into silence. After a full half of an ancient hour, Xianxia stood up, bowed to Guan and said, Amitabha. Thank you, benefactor, for resolving my doubts. Guan waved his hand and said, what's there to thank for? If you really want to express gratitude, find time to guide the disciples of my valley in their cultivation. Xianxia did not refuse, and inwardly he felt moved. Guan was truly a profound being, always considering others. He asked, benefactor, I see you have many books in your room. May I take a look at one? Upon hearing this, Guan began looking around. Xianxia suggested, how about the book in your hands, lend it to this monk to study? Guan's expression changed instantly, and he closed the Supreme Secret Records and said, not this one. Chapter 282 Reincarnation of the Great Fortune of Energy Movement. Out of respect for social interaction, Xianxia had refrained from using his divine sense, so he was unaware of the content of the book in Guan's hands. Even when Guan refused him, he did not entertain any impolite thoughts. He inquired why, and Guan replied that Buddhism sect did not deem it suitable to read secular books, and then he handed Xianxia a copy of Righteous Path and Demon Path. Righteous Path and Demon Path told the story of how Sword Venerable Fudao inscribed the characters for Righteous Path at the Heavenly Repair platform, revealing the dark secrets of the Supreme Sect. Instead of tarnishing the Supreme Sect's reputation, the book made more people aware of the sect's pursuit of righteousness, encouraging them to actively correct their errors. Although the book was not as popular as Journey to the West or Investiture of the Gods, many within the sect still favored it, studying it repeatedly. Xianxia took the book, and upon seeing the title on the cover, his interest was piqued. He thanked Guan and left. After he left, Guan finally took out the Supreme Secret Records and continued reading. He found it difficult to concern himself with the troubles of others' lives. When asked, he would speak his true thoughts without imposing. He had his own life to live. Why worry more than necessary? Guan liked to consider himself an observer in others' lives, acting as he pleased, but without becoming overly fixated, lest it turn into regret. After arriving at the third Medicine Valley, Xianxia decided not to leave, and Guan did not turn away this 9 layers wandering immortal realm great cultivator. Today's third Medicine Valley was undoubtedly the strongest place in the Supreme Sect, even on the continent. With Xianxia and Nine-Finger Divine Lord there, Guan was not concerned for the safety of Medicine Valley and was more at ease when venturing out. 5 years passed quickly. That year's summer was not as hot as previous ones. Guan descended the stairs and saw many cultivators flying across the sky. This year the Supreme Sect was preparing to host another alchemy conference, and it promised to be lively. Guan also planned to go and enjoy the bustle. After descending the stairs, he rode off on the Blood Prison Great Saint. Just as the Blood Prison Great Saint stood up, Zhou Xian caught up. Seeing this, Guan had no choice but to dismount and pat the back of the Blood Prison Great Saint, saying, "You're free to roam around today." With Zhou Xian present, it wasn't appropriate for Guan to ride a mount. Both of them riding together? What would that look like? Guan valued his reputation and integrity. The Blood Prison Great Saint left with a joyful expression, and Zhou Xian asked, "Why not continue to ride?" Guan rolled his eyes at her and said, "I was already riding it and you came to find me, obviously wanting to follow. If that's the case, I can only bring you along." This girl was playing coy, just trying to gauge his thoughts. Sure enough, upon hearing his words, Zhou Xiaoyu's lips curved into a slight smile, and a charming smile brightened her face. "Let's go. Let's take a stroll around the outer gate city." Okay. The two of them leapt up and flew towards the outer gate city. 30 minutes later, Guan and Zhou Xiaoyu arrived below the Heavenly Repair platform. Looking up, the platform was swarming with people, a magnificent sight. Guan felt the presence of many in the Immortal Path realm, and although his days passed year by year in sameness, the Supreme Sect was growing stronger each year. It was said that the Hall of Elders in the sect had changed a lot of members, and the overall cultivation realm had elevated. Clan families within the gate would recruit cultivators from overseas, so those who stepped down were not suppressed. Instead, they became stronger and gained greater benefits. As Guan surveyed the scene, he employed lifespan detection. He liked to see the maximum lifespans of people, something even divine immortals of wondrous dharma could not detect. Ji Xiaoyu initiated. I heard you know another Ji Xiaoyu? Guan responded, yes, the third miss I mentioned before. Is she me? Ji Xiaoyu suddenly asked. Guan looked at her in surprise. Had the girl already awakened past life memories? Ji Xiaoyu explained, I've had my name since birth and I feel a strong identification with it, unlike a habit acquired later in life. Plus, not long after that Ji Xiaoyu died I was born. The first time I met you I felt a closeness to you and coincidentally you knew the other Ji Xiaoyu. I don't think it's a coincidence. With a steady gaze she looked at Guan waiting for his answer. Guan couldn't help but raise his hand to touch her forehead, then retracted it and spoke softly, You don't have a fever, do you? Ji Xiaoyu glared at him and said, I'm serious. Guan spread his hands helplessly, Why are you asking me? I'm just a core formation realm cultivator. Can I see through reincarnation? But since I've known you, you don't seem curious about my name. That's because I was shocked before you arrived. You can ask the vice sect leader. Is that so? What else, miss? Even if it's true, I don't want to delve into it. If you truly are the same person as her, just thinking about it is frightening. What kind of conspiracies and vortices lie behind it? Me, with my core formation cultivation level dabbling in it, am likely to turn to dust. Guan spoke with a face full of fear, and as he did he even stepped to the side. After listening, Ji Xiaoyu found his reasoning sound, but seeing his expressions and gestures, she couldn't help but feel both aggravated and amused. Brother Gu, you've arrived. A figure descended from the heavenly repair platform. It was Wu Ju. Wu Ju, now at the second layer of the divinity transformation realm, was a renowned prodigy of the supreme sect, cultivated with vast resources from the sect, exuding an air of confidence and vigor, a far cry from his timid past. Guan greeted him with a smile. Wu Ju looked at Ji Xiaoyu with a puzzled expression. Why has Brother Gu changed his female companion again? That's a bit too. Guan immediately introduced Ji Xiaoyu to Wu Ju, who suddenly realized, You are the Ji Xiaoyu with the strongest talent from the Ji family in recent years? Ji Xiaoyu nodded slightly, and once Guan finished introducing him she wasn't too surprised. Wu Ju was merely a famous prodigy, but the Third Medicine Valley hid many great cultivators, and even the sect leader occasionally visited. Afterwards Wu Ju exchanged pleasantries with Guan and then left. They had made previous plans to drink together after some time. But Guan knew they would probably miss that appointment. He indeed had time, but Wu Ju did not. He was either busy cultivating or on missions. For a talent like Wu Ju, cultivation could last for years. Guan watched Wu Ju's departing figure, reflecting inwardly that too much leisure was not a good thing. Wu Ju's maximum lifespan remained unchanged, just as it had been decades ago. Of course, with his current maximum lifespan of 7,600 years, surpassing the Mahayana realm shouldn't be a problem. Guan simply felt a bit regretful because he initially believed Wu Ju could compete with An Hao. Ji Xiaoyu noticed the regret in his eyes and couldn't help asking, What's wrong? Guan replied with a smile, I feel a bit sorry for him. I think his achievements could have been even higher. His achievements are not high enough? Without An Hao returning, he is already the Supreme Sect's #1 prodigy, Ji Xiaoyu said, confused. Haha, indeed. Guan said no more, leading Ji Xiaoyu to the heavenly repair platform. Miss Third once attempted to lift the heaven-cutting axe. You can also try when your cultivation level is higher, Guan casually mentioned. Ji Xiaoyu became interested in the heaven-cutting axe. They made their way through the crowds, arriving near the axe. Zhou Xian was reprimanding someone at the moment due to the crowd. Someone had stepped into the axe's ceremonial area. The so-called ceremonial area was marked by Zhou Xian. Aside from challengers, no one was allowed to enter a certain range to show respect towards Sword Venerable Fu Dao, and his proposal was acknowledged by the Supreme Sect, necessitating careful consideration in their treatment of Sword Venerable Fu Dao. Gu An's gaze landed on someone in the crowd. Stealing the 5 elements, heaven and earth, flying immortal realm 9 layers 0/0/0, Divine Exotic Ghost King. This guy was something else, with a very mysterious method of concealing his aura. Had Guan not used his divine sense to scan the outer gate city upon arriving, he would not have noticed him. Stealing the 5 elements appeared as a scholar, wearing a scholar's hat, holding a folding fan, indistinct among the crowd, displaying curiosity while watching others challenge the heaven-cutting axe, without stepping forward himself. Guan only glanced at him before passing by so as not to draw his attention. Back in the divine exotic realm, he had seen stealing the 5 elements, who certainly did not have the subdued aura he had now. This fellow daring to come to his turf, Guan wondered about his motives. Was he here to investigate him? Guan was curious to see what he would do next. Before long, the Alchemy conference was about to begin in the city, prompting many to descend from the heavenly repair platform and head for the excitement. The Alchemy conference was held in various cities, like a regional contest, with the final competition being held elsewhere, using formations to display the event to disciples and cultivators in all cities. Seeing Guan, Zhou Xian cheerfully greeted him. His son Zhou Lin was a good friend of Gu's. Guan was known for his thoughtful conduct, leaving a good impression. Care to try? Test how your cultivation has progressed recently, Zhou Xian invited with a jovial tone. Guan looked at Zhou Xian and said, any day is as good as today and it's not a one-time opportunity. You go ahead. Zhou Xian nodded, stepping forward toward the heaven-cutting axe. Stealing the 5 elements' gaze fell on Zhou Xian and all of a sudden his expression changed, revealing some excitement which he quickly suppressed. His fluctuating demeanor didn't escape Guan's divine sense, but Guan pretended not to notice. In the end, Zhou Xian failed, but no one laughed at her. After all, over the many years, no one had ever succeeded with the heaven-cutting axe. After exchanging a few words with Zhou Xian, Guan left. As they stepped out of the crowd and into a more open space, stealing the 5 elements approached them rapidly. Wait, both of you. Stealing the 5 elements called out, prompting Guan and Zhou Xian to stop and turn to look at him, their eyes questioning. He stopped in front of them and greeted them with a salute, saying, my name is Wuxia and I have traveled here from overseas. I've seen quite a bit and can say I'm rather worldly. I noticed that this young lady carries exceptional chi fortune, no doubt the incarnation of someone with great fortune of energy movement. If you're interested, perhaps we could find a place to talk further. Hearing the word incarnation, Zhou Xian frowned. She instinctively looked at Guan, eager to hear what stealing the 5 elements had to say, but wary of displeasing Guan. Chapter 283 Reincarnation Path. Emperor facing Zhou Xian's questioning gaze, Guan naturally agreed. Then the 3 of them found an inn and sat down, with Guan choosing a spot on the 2nd floor by the window. He liked to chat in this spot while watching the bustle of the streets below. Stealing the 5 elements glanced at Guan and Zhou Xian, then pinched his teacup, looked at the surface of the tea and said, although we are meeting for the first time, this young lady must have an innate Daoist talisman hidden within her. Speaking of which, you and I are old acquaintances. In one of your past lives, you had formed ties with me. After he finished speaking, he first glanced at Guan and then at Zhou Xian. He was uncertain of the relationship between the two, so he spoke very cautiously. Guan understood his concerns and said, Daoist friend, feel free to speak. She is very curious about her past life. Zhou Xian nodded and asked, how long ago was that? Stealing the 5 elements revealed a smile and said with feeling, it must have been nearly 20,000 years ago. 20,000 years. The faces of both Guan and Zhou Xian changed drastically. Guan's expression was feigned while Zhou Xian was genuinely shocked, since the known history of the Ji family didn't even span 20,000 years. Who were you 20,000 years ago, and why did you come to the supreme sect? Zhou Xian asked cautiously. Guan could feel that stealing the 5 elements had already imposed a restriction, making it impossible for other diners to hear their conversation. Stealing the 5 elements answered, to be honest, this trip to the supreme sect was specifically for you. I can sense that you have reincarnated again. In terms of status, I should respectfully call you a senior. If not for your intervention back then, I would have ceased to exist long ago. Talking about the past, his face was full of nostalgia, his gaze unfocused as if his thoughts had drifted back to the distant past. Zhou Xian furrowed her brows and asked, why did I reincarnate? Stealing the 5 elements said, I only know you experienced calamities. You weren't forced into reincarnation due to hatred, and you can rest assured about this. No one in this world can do anything to you. I even consider you the strongest person I have ever seen. This genuinely surprised Guan because he had been to Divine Exotic City and seen stealing the 5 elements demonstrate his power. Knowing this, stealing the 5 elements still believed that one of Zhou Xiaoyu's past lives was stronger. It seemed like the last time in the 7 Stars spirit realm, the innate Daoist talisman had not yet displayed its true power, but at that time, it had already been enough for Zhou Xiaoyu to seek revenge. Stealing the 5 elements continued to speak about Zhou Xiaoyu's strength at the time. In that lifetime, Zhou Xiaoyu had called herself Reincarnation Path Emperor. The two had met only once, but due to Reincarnation Path Emperor's kindness, stealing the 5 elements had always wanted to repay her, only to find his freedom in recent years. He did not reveal his real identity, and the name Divine Exotic Ghost King was already known throughout the world. He also knew his reputation was not good. From stealing the 5 elements story, Zhou Xiaoyu could only understand how strong her previous self was, and it didn't unravel the secrets of reincarnation. She looked at stealing the 5 elements and asked, "What exactly do you need from me now? I can't help you with anything in my current state." She was very cautious, worried that stealing the 5 elements might want to kill her and force her previous life to emerge. Guan had been listening silently, noting down the name Reincarnation Path Emperor, planning to investigate further the next time he visited Immortal Seeking Island. 20,000 years might seem an eternity to mortals, but for great cultivators such as wandering immortals and heaven and earth flying immortals, it wasn't much, having lived through epochs preceding the fall of the Reincarnation Path Emperor. After a moment of hesitation, stealing the 5 elements said, "A catastrophe that will affect all beings is soon to erupt. When it does, many seas and continents will be destroyed, including the continent you are currently on, and I too am deeply trapped, unable to escape. The Reincarnation Path Emperor had a divine skill that could free me, even if it meant undergoing reincarnation I would be willing." Upon hearing this, Guan was somewhat surprised. From what stealing the 5 elements said, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm was likely to die. Why would an adversary of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm want to annihilate all living beings? He had previously felt that the appearance of the Divine Exotic Realm was not a coincidence, and clearly the Master was wary of something. Otherwise, with the Master's strength, he could have swept away any invaders. "But I am not the Reincarnation Path Emperor." Zhou Xiaoyu hesitated. Stealing the 5 elements waved his hand and said, "You needn't worry. I am not here to force you to help me now. When the catastrophe falls, no one will be able to save themselves. At that time, you will undoubtedly awaken your primal consciousness. Just remember me then." After hearing this, Zhou Xiaoyu's brows furrowed even tighter. Stealing the 5 elements looked at Guan and said, "It is best not to spread the word about this. Not even the Supreme Sect or any major powers overseas can prepare for it in advance. It's better if the cultivators here enjoy their current lives unaware, lest the spreading news precipitate the catastrophe." Guan nodded and said, "I understand that principle. I just want to know how long until the catastrophe erupts. If it's a few hundred years later, then I am relieved." Stealing the 5 elements laughed, suddenly finding this core formation realm minor cultivator quite amusing. Zhou Xiaoyu couldn't help but shoot Guan a look, but she had to admit, after Guan asked that question, a lot of her tension was relieved. It could be as soon as a few decades or as long as a few centuries. There are unimaginable powers at play behind the scenes. I can only say when the oceans begin to rise, that will represent the arrival of calamity. Stealing the 5 elements answer caused Zhou Xiaoyu to frown again. After speaking, he stood up and said, "Well, that's all I have to say. I won't disturb you any further." He raised his hand in a salutation and then left. Once he left the floor, the invisible restriction vanished. Guan turned to Zhou Xiaoyu and chuckled, "You certainly have an impressive background. I might have to think twice before joking with you in the future." Zhou Xiaoyu huffed, "Aren't you joking now?" After hearing his words, "What do you think?" "I am not pleased. Although I had already guessed that I and the third miss you spoke of are the same person, I actually hoped my guess would be incorrect. Now, learning even more identities has only increased my displeasure." Zhou Xiaoyu spoke calmly, her tone devoid of any emotional fluctuation. Guan looked at her, his gaze turning thoughtful. Normally, he subconsciously considered this life's Zhou Xiaoyu and her previous life as the same person, even if their characters differed. In his heart they were the same. However, different memories and experiences had shaped a different person, even though the soul remained the same. The essence of being human is more than just the soul. Guan tried to comfort her. If you are unhappy, then focus on cultivating, making your life in this incarnation last longer, or perhaps even achieving enlightenment. Ji Xiaoyu shook her head. I can't achieve enlightenment. I will eventually die. The reason I cultivate is merely to make this life last longer and experience more. I often bother you just to enrich this life's experiences. She paused, then smiled and added, besides, you can only live for a few hundred years yourself, so why comfort me? Don't worry, even if I am unhappy, I am willing to accept this reality. Acceptance, huh? Guan chose not to probe further. He then called for the waiter and ordered a table full of exquisite food and drinks, shifting the conversation to the alchemy conference. Ji Xiaoyu's attention shifted as well, and it was as if the conversation with stealing the 5 elements had never happened. The alchemy conference eventually ended, and the cultivator who won first place was from overseas, a disciple of the Purple Pill Palace. It was the first time the disciples of the Supreme Sect had learned about Purple Pill Palace, an ancient alchemy sect that brought many alchemy techniques through this conference. Purple Pill Palace also offered to take a group of Supreme Sect disciples to their palace to cultivate the alchemy Dao, stirring excitement throughout the Supreme Sect. Guan was mainly concerned about stealing the 5 elements, who remained at the Supreme Sect and even formally became an inner sect disciple. Except for Guan, no one knew his true cultivation level. Even Xianxia and the 9-Finger Divine Lord could not see through him. By the end of summer, stealing the 5 elements had become a regular at the chess area of the 3rd Medicine Valley. One day, Guan had just returned from the North Sea Mountain and was discussing the affairs of Mystic Valley with Lu Jujia. He suddenly felt a strong aura of battle coming from afar. From within the sea-breaking rift. This pressure had surpassed that of the heaven and earth flying Immortal. That meant the master of divine exotic realm might have made a move. It seemed that stealing the 5 elements' words might indeed be true. Alright, I agree. I'll discuss with the sect next time to expand Mystic Valley. Guan nodded. Lu Jujia immediately showed a smile. Guan shared the profits of Mystic Valley with him every year. The bigger the Mystic Valley, the more he would gain. Since he had begun cultivating the Daoist expansion skill, Lu Jujia had rekindled his fighting spirit. For this skill he needed a lot of medicinal herbs. Guan suddenly remembered something and said, let's release your cultivation level by the end of this year. Take all the elixirs you have. Lu Jujia frowned and asked, why? Can't we wait a bit longer? Why? Because you only live to be 190 years old. Guan did not reveal this fact. Instead he said, I have obtained a higher-level mental method. I will pass it on to you later and then you can release your cultivation level multiple times. Upon hearing this, Lu Jujia was instantly overjoyed and quickly agreed. Guan patted his shoulder and then left. Lu Jujia had begun to fantasize about what kind of transformation he would undergo after lifting the restrictions on his cultivation. Guan arrived at the 3rd Medicine Valley and went to the chess area. The 9-Finger Divine Lord had encountered an opponent again. It was stealing the 5 elements. Stealing the 5 elements mastered the rules of Go and swiftly dominated the chess scene of the Supreme Sect. The 9-Finger Divine Lord, unable to see through his hidden cultivation, was quite frustrated. Of course, in the heart of the 9-Finger Divine Lord, stealing the 5 elements was definitely not an ordinary person. Gu Anna's background was easier to investigate, having entered the Supreme Sect at the age of 15 and being a house servant of the Ji family when he was young. His age could not be hidden. But stealing the 5 elements was different. He came from overseas. The 9-Finger Divine Lord looked up at stealing the 5 elements, feeling annoyed. Who exactly is this guy? Stealing the 5 elements, smiling, waved his fan. He was not afraid of the 9-Finger Divine Lord's suspicions. With his cultivation level, it was impossible for the Divine Lord to see through him. In the entire Supreme Sect, there was only one person he feared. Sword Venerable Fudao, who seemed to have accepted him as long as he did not cause trouble. I lost. The 9-Finger Divine Lord inhaled deeply and declared gravely. He had lost to stealing the 5 elements 6 times and felt utterly humiliated. The surrounding crowd cheered, exacerbating his depression. Stealing the 5 elements stood up and laughed. To celebrate this victory, how about I teach everyone a spell for close combat? The disciples were even more delighted, their cheers drawing the attention of other disciples from afar. Chapter 284. Zhang Buku becomes a disciple. Seeing that stealing the 5 elements was willing to teach the disciples sorcery, Guan was secretly pleased. This guy knew his way around people far more so than the 9-Finger Divine Lord. As the number of Medicine Valley disciples increased, Guan's distance from them grew ever larger. Despite being called master and disciple in name, they didn't share that true relationship. Even so, Guan still hoped they would have a better life and come across more opportunities for immortal cultivation. Stealing the 5 elements immediately took action, and seeing Guan on the way, he greeted him. After they left, Guan went to the chess table and looked at the 9-Finger Divine Lord, smiling. "Shall we play a game?" The 9-Finger Divine Lord snorted. "No, find him to play if you dare." "Then forget it. He seems very powerful. I'm not sure I'd win, so I can't start a game so carelessly." "What do you mean you are sure with me? Have I ever lost to you?" "You..." The 9-Finger Divine Lord was so angry he wanted to slam the table and stand up. Seeing the smile on Guan's face, he understood that Guan was deliberately provoking him. Guan then asked, "By the way, it's been a while since you returned. Where's Chu Jingfeng? Aren't you taking care of him?" "Don't worry, he's doing well. He's in seclusion. When he returns you'll have to look up to him." The thought of Guan being surpassed by his own disciple, even becoming a figure from another world, made him quite cheerful again. Guan sighed. "If that's true, that would be wonderful. I have no hope of becoming an immortal. If he can achieve immortality, then I would also know an immortal and my life would be without regrets." The 9-Finger Divine Lord really wanted to say that he himself was an immortal, but looking at Guan's expression he felt ashamed. What was wrong with himself? Why was he being so petty? Guan noticed the change in his expression and cursed inwardly. "The old man still wants to rile me up. Watch me retreat to advance." The 9-Finger Divine Lord began speaking about the sect where Chu Jingfeng was located. He had sent Chu Jingfeng to an overseas branch of a sect, which, although not as powerful as the Star Sea congregations, was still stronger than the Supreme Sect. Guan listened intently to his tale of the overseas realm. It was nearly evening when Guan returned to his attic. In recent days he had seen more and more heaven and earth flying immortals return, mostly near the sea-breaking rift. Clearly a great battle was brewing. He sat in his chair, concentrated his mind, and his primordial spirit emerged. The carefree primordial immortal could remain undetected and untouchable by all beings, and even the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma could not perceive it. Guan quickly snuck into the sea-breaking rift, where he saw more fighting figures along the way than before, with nearly every heaven and earth engaged in battle. He stepped into the largest heaven and earth, which was where the Master of Divine Exotic Realm resided. At the moment the Master of Divine Exotic Realm wasn't fighting, but there was still the aura of another carefree primordial immortal lingering, a sign that someone else had recently left the area. Guan landed in front of a cave, dark with a faint sound of wind. He stepped into the cave silently, the wind passing through his immortal soul of wondrous Dharma without any obstacle. Walking through the winding cave he arrived at a chamber where Zhang Buku, now a divine exotic resentful ghost, was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Lying across his legs was an axe, formed not from a Dharma treasure but from condensed divine exotic force. Zhang Buku's eyes were closed, his brow furrowed as if he was enduring torment. Although he retained his original soul consciousness, he was constantly enduring the erosion of divine exotic force, as it autonomously devoured the soul. This was a process that even the Master of Divine Exotic Realm could not reverse. Guan sighed at the sight of his painful demeanor. How distressed would senior brother Zhang be if he saw this? Guan transformed into a sparrow and perched on a nearby rock. He chirped softly and Zhang Buku opened his eyes instinctively. Upon seeing the sparrow he was stunned. "Is that..." Zhang Buku's face lit up with joy. Just as he was about to speak, the sparrow flapped its wings humanly, signaling him to keep silent. Zhang Buku immediately understood but remained excited. Though unclear about the origin of the sparrow, he was grateful to it. When he had been close to death, it led him to a cave where he found a demon core and learned a world-dominating axe method. He had always harbored dreams about the sparrow, but never did he imagine he would see it here. At this moment, Zhang Buku felt incredibly fortunate. No matter the origin of the sparrow, There was someone looking out for him in the dark. How could he not be happy? The sparrow suddenly flew toward him, but he didn't dodge. Then he felt a peck on his forehead and a flood of memories poured into his mind, leaving him in a daze. Time was lost to him. When Zhang Buku regained consciousness, his mind was filled with the memory of cultivating a divine skill. Limitless freedom step. Murmuring to himself, even reflecting on the divine skill let him sense its profound and inscrutable nature. Perfect, now he could practice the divine skill to divert the pain in his body. To use the words of the master of divine exotic realm, he had to get used to the erosion of divine exotic force, or he would truly become a divine exotic resentful ghost. Perhaps the sparrow wanted to help him in this way. Warmth filled Zhang Buku's heart, and he suddenly felt that his pain was bearable. How many perished in the divine exotic realm, turning directly into divine exotic resentful ghosts? While he still had a chance, how could he not be joyous? I must practice diligently, get out of here early so Liya won't worry. And Martial Uncle Gu. If I were to stay here for hundreds or even thousands of years, wouldn't I lose the chance to ever see Martial Uncle Gu again? Zhang Buku felt a sense of urgency at the thought. He always felt that Martial Uncle Gu wasn't simple, possibly concealing cultivation level. But no matter how much Gu concealed, he was younger than Liya and couldn't possibly be much stronger, especially since Liya had an opportunity like Divine Exotic City. Zhang Buku stood up and started practicing the limitless freedom step. He moved around the chamber, changing his step technique, gradually losing track of time and forgetting his pain. However, because he was in cultivation, his will became exceptionally clear. In the blink of an eye, 2 years went by rapidly. Zhang Buku was still in the cave, practicing the limitless freedom step without rest. For him, practicing the divine skill was not exhausting. He even began to find a way to resist the divine exotic force. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel, jolting him from his focus. He turned to see the master of divine exotic realms slowly entering the chamber. Zhang Buku had seen him before, so he wasn't afraid, just vigilant. The master of divine exotic realm looked at him and said, "The divine skill you're practicing is exceptional with great potential. Practice well, for your future achievements will certainly be extraordinary." Hearing this, Zhang Buku was surprised. Knowing the nature of his divine skill, the other didn't inquire further about it. Did that guy recognize the sparrow? Zhang Buku was about to ask when the master of divine exotic realm said, "Although your friend obtained divine exotic city, he has not truly mastered its power. Another is its master. Would you like to take me as your teacher and inherit my mantle? In the future you could claim divine exotic city as your own. Of course, if you are unwilling, you've received my teachings. Conquering an immortal path supreme treasure in the future would not be difficult. Take him as a teacher?" Zhang Buku was a bit slow to process this. He could feel the suppressive force from the master of divine exotic realm. He was utterly incapable of resisting him, even unable to lie. In such a situation, if the master of divine exotic realm wanted to calculate against him, why would he need to beat around the bush? The master of divine exotic realm saw through his thoughts and explained, "What interests me is not you but the entity behind you. Now your fate is linked with mine. If I perish, you must die. At least we are now on the same side. If I can be on good terms with your backing, it's all benefits and no harm." "Pai backing? Who is it?" Zhang Buku asked in surprise. The master of divine exotic realm showed no astonishment. He had already delved into Zhang Buku's memories, but some parts were not clear, obscured by a force preventing his probing. He dared not investigate further as he had already witnessed the power behind Zhang Buku. If you don't know, then don't ask too much. Knowing too much isn't always good. You just need to understand that whether it's him or me, if we wanted to harm you, we wouldn't need such methods. Your worth isn't that high, the master of divine exotic realm said slowly. After listening, Zhang Buku fell silent. He wasn't angered. In fact, he was even more grateful to the sparrow. Even if it was manipulation, he accepted it. He would definitely repay the sparrow in the future. As for the master of divine exotic realm, strictly speaking, they had no direct enmity. If he died in the divine exotic realm, he couldn't blame anyone. After all, it was his own path that he had chosen and nobody had forced him to come. Zhang Buku took a deep breath and said, "All right." He then knelt halfway and saluted with a fist. "Honorable master above, please accept your disciple's bow." And with that he bowed his head. The master of divine exotic realms' face revealed a smile. It's been many years since anyone called me master. My last disciple is now high above, seemingly afraid of any association with me. His tone was full of self-derision. Zhang Buku looked up and asked, "Who is your disciple?" The smile on the master of divine exotic realms' face faded and he scoffed. "Him? Just a dog of the holy court." Chapter 285 Life Seizing Immortal, Calming the Sea's Fury. Name: Guan. Lifespan: 195/12708862. Physique: Primordial Karmic Body. Cultivation Level: Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm. 9 layers. Under the tree, Guan lay on his back resting. He called up his attribute panel to check, and as he looked at his lifespan, a smile appeared on his lips. It had been 21 years since his last breakthrough, and had accumulated over 12 million years of lifespan so quickly. Guan was very satisfied, proving he hadn't slackened. As long as he maintained this pace, a billion-year lifespan wouldn't be far off. After looking, Guan sent his divine sense toward the sea-breaking rift. Not long ago, Zhang Buku had become an apprentice to the master of divine exotic realm. Guan could feel the goodwill released by the master of divine exotic realm, and he wasn't just paying lip service. Had already started teaching Zhang Buku earnestly and hadn't left the cave where Zhang Buku resided. From this matter, it was clear that the master of divine exotic realm was quite urgent, indicating that the catastrophe mentioned by stealing the 5 elements was approaching. Guan wasn't in a hurry. The master of divine exotic realm surely had other powers. Otherwise, how would he dare to create such a rift in the sea? Let them fight it out first. Once it involves Zhang Buku, he would then consider intervening. Anyway, Guan wouldn't directly involve himself in the strife unless he was certain of his ability to solve the root of the problem. Zhang Buku seemed to be in a good state, so Guan could rest assured. Everything's good, everyone is busy. Being busy is a good thing. Guan scanned all those he had good relations with using his divine sense, and seeing that everyone was well, he smiled. He sat up, stretched lazily, and then got up to leave. Disciples he encountered along the way greeted him, and he nodded back with a smile, his attitude gentle and devoid of airs. All the way to the pavilion he saw Yang Jian conversing with the Blood Prison Great Saint about issues in physical cultivation. The Blood Prison Great Saint was also a physique cultivator. Otherwise he wouldn't have obtained divine beast true blood. Seeing Guan approaching, Yang Jian hurriedly stood up to greet him. Guan thought for a moment and said, "Rest well, and in a while, they'll take you to spar in a combat to test your real strength." Upon hearing this, Yang Jian's eyes lit up. Normally he could only spar with Li Lingtian, which was quite boring. Hearing that he could actually fight a real battle, how could he not be excited? Without waiting for a response, Guan stepped upstairs. In the distance, stealing the 5 elements, who was playing Go with someone, was observing Yang Jian thoughtfully. He could see that Yang Jian possessed some type of ancient treasure body, which made him more curious about Guan. No wonder this person could establish a close relationship with the reincarnation of the Reincarnation Path Emperor. His origins must be extraordinary. He didn't intend to investigate Guan but planned to form a good relationship with Yang Jian later. No matter what, as long as Yang Jian lived to 1,000 years, he would surely become a renowned figure, and befriending such an existence was naturally a good thing. Stealing the 5 elements started contemplating what spells and divine skills to teach Yang Jian. Guan didn't mind him guiding other disciples in cultivation, so he certainly wouldn't stop him from teaching Yang Jian. That evening, stealing the 5 elements found Yang Jian. "Little brother, I've observed you for some time and feel that your talent and comprehension are exceptional. I have a hand technique set. Would you like to learn it?" Stealing the 5 elements asked with a smile. Yang Jian knew he was a great cultivator. After all, he could win against the 9-fingered Divine Lord in Go. "Thank you for your kindness, senior, but there's no need." Yang Jian clasped his fists and refused. Stealing the 5 elements was slightly taken aback and asked, "Do you think I'm not strong enough?" Yang Jian shook his head and said, "To be honest, I'm not interested in hand techniques, as the spells and divine skills related to the body are not as powerful as enhancing physical strength." Stealing the 5 elements became interested and curiously asked, "Then what do you want to learn?" Seeing his persistence, Yang Jian asked, "Senior, have you ever read Investiture of the Gods or Journey to the West?" Stealing the 5 elements nodded and said, "Of course I've read them. You call yourself Yang Jian. Could it be that you want to become an existence like him? But that's just fictional writing, and the cultivation techniques and divine skills in the books don't actually exist. Upon hearing this, Yang Jian could only shake his head and turn to leave. Wait, how about I teach you a spear technique? This is the most powerful long weapon technique I hold. Once mastered, it can dominate the world, being unmatched, suiting your physique well. Stealing the 5 elements hurriedly called out to Yang Jian. Yang Jian stopped, looking at him, his eyes slightly expectant. Stealing the 5 elements smiled and said, "This spear technique is called the Heaven-Extinguishing Tao Annihilating 36 Spear Techniques. It's very difficult to cultivate, and so far no one has inherited it in the current age." Yang Jian, upon hearing this, said, "Is that so? Then I must try it. Thank you, senior. Find a deserted place to practice, then." All right. The two headed deeper into Medicine Valley, followed by the Blood Prison Great Saint, who was intrigued and wanted to watch. Stealing the 5 elements didn't chase him away because he believed it was impossible for the Great Saint to master it. Yang Jian did possess an ancient treasure body, a physique rare in this era. Inside the pavilion, Guan also noticed this scene, but he didn't pay much attention, as stealing the 5 elements shouldn't act recklessly, and if he dared, it would be courting death. Moreover, he was curious about the heaven-extinguishing Tao Annihilating 36 spear techniques, wondering if they were indeed that powerful. A night passed. As dawn broke, the disciples gathered to practice. Guan saw Yang Jian approaching quickly, with stealing the 5 elements following behind. Stealing the 5 elements appeared dazed, lacking his usual composure, as if had been frightened. Guan found it amusing. Stealing the 5 elements was likely startled by Yang Jian's comprehension and physique. After just one night, Yang Jian had preliminarily mastered the heaven-extinguishing Tao Annihilating 36 spear techniques. Although he hadn't yet unleashed its true power, it was enough to amaze stealing the 5 elements. He suspected that Yang Jian's physique was among the strongest of ancient treasure bodies. Unfortunately, Impermanence Tian had been obliterated. Otherwise, he could have asked him, as he was the most knowledgeable about ancient treasure bodies. "What did you do?" Li Lingtian looked at Yang Jian, surprised. Yang Jian's breath was chaotic, indicating he hadn't rested the previous night. Yang Jian dismissively said, "Just cultivating, don't ask more." Li Lingtian cast a glance at stealing the 5 elements in the distance and understood. After finishing their exercises, Li Lingtian found stealing the 5 elements to inquire if had taught Yang Jian any Daoist sorcery, to which stealing the 5 elements nodded without concealment. "Can you teach me as well? My talent isn't bad either." Li Lingtian promptly asked. Stealing the 5 elements appraised him and said, "Your aptitude is indeed good, but not enough to make me act. Improve your cultivation first, and perhaps one day when you look pleasing to my eyes, I'll teach you." Pleasing? Li Lingtian was infuriated. All his life had been cherished by others and had never been rejected. Even in the 3rd Medicine Valley, Guan hadn't refused him. Li Lingtian, teeth clenched, stormed off. Stealing the 5 elements wasn't bothered. Li Lingtian's predicaments weren't complicated, and the forces behind him didn't threaten stealing the 5 elements. He even anticipated trouble from Li Lingtian's backers, something to spice up his life. Just as he was about to play go, Xianxia intercepted him. "Ba, benefactor, care to chat?" Xianxia sternly asked, stealing the 5 elements. Stealing the 5 elements smiled and nodded, and the two left the 3rd Medicine Valley. With autumn's arrival, the 3rd Medicine Valley gradually took on hues of withering yellow, and disciples could be seen everywhere clearing fallen leaves. Inside the pavilion, Xinzhen was enthusiastically discussing her new masterpiece with Guan. Guan was uninterested in her journey to the south, and his divine sense was gazing towards the ocean. Above the sea-breaking rift was a shocking battle where one person fought against 3 divine exotic ghost kings, and that person even had the upper hand. Heaven and earth flying immortal. The divine exotic ghost kings were already at the 9th level of heaven and earth flying immortal. Yet there was another heaven and earth flying immortal who could single-handedly overpower them. How could this not pique Guan's curiosity? "Are you listening?" Xinzhen asked, dissatisfied. Guan smiled. "Of course I'm listening, but I'm more curious about your cultivation than your book." Xinzhen, Nascent Soul Realm, 7th layer 231/880/4400. Xinzhen's maximum lifespan had actually increased. This surprised Guan, Previously, Xianxia's maximum lifespan was only over 2,500 years. Pity his junior sister and brother, diligently cultivating, yet unable to find a path enlightenment opportunity. Xianxia, who spent her days writing and painting, lazy in cultivation, just saw her maximum lifespan increase. How could he reason with this? Perhaps writing and painting were another path of cultivation. Xianxia coughed lightly, her face slightly uneasy, and she replied, "I'm doing okay. I'm working hard." Guan didn't have the heart to expose her. Every time he checked on her with his divine sense over the years, she was either reading, writing, painting, or playing music, living alone in her cave, seemingly never getting tired. Now it seemed that her actions were not without meaning. Judging from Xianxia's expression, she seemed unaware of her increased talent and comprehension. Guan didn't mention it. After all, she was still young and didn't need to rush in cultivation. If he said something, she might never find that same feeling again. "What about you? Why does it seem like your cultivation isn't progressing?" Xianxia asked, raising an eyebrow. Upon hearing this, Guan's face darkened immediately and he sighed. Xianxia frowned. "What's wrong? Is something troubling you?" "Nothing. I just increasingly feel heavenly destiny. Even with medicinal herbs for alchemy, I find breaking through difficult. You don't understand this feeling. I see no future in immortal cultivation. Perhaps this is already my future," Guan sighed. Hearing him, Xianxia opened her mouth, wanting to console him, but words failed her. Talent is reality. Guan's friend Wuju had already soared, and as for Li Ya, had already become the face of the supreme sect. Guan forced a smile. "Xian, my life is short, but yours is different." As he was about to continue, suddenly, a vast oppressive force engulfed the heavens and earth, interrupting him. Immediately, a dominantly unrivaled voice resounded throughout the world. "I am the life-seizing immortal of the great cold demon sect. Today I plant a tower at the sea-breaking rift. Within 100 years, if no one can defeat me, I will annihilate all living beings who have heard my words to quell the ocean's fury." The Great Cold Demon Sect. Guan had heard of this sect, a demon path sect comparable to the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. According to Baizia, the Great Cold Demon Sect was also one of the few demon path sects recognized by the Holy Court. Though a demon sect, the places they massacred were all territories abandoned by the Holy Court. Could it be that their continent and the surrounding seas had already been abandoned by the Holy Court? Chapter 286. The background of connecting to heaven. Great Cold Demon Sect? Life-seizing immortal? Where did they come from? Xianxia frowned, muttering under his breath, his eyes revealing a hint of unease. Guan continued, "Not sure, but judging from the voice, it's likely a massive creature from the sea. We had peace for just a few decades, and now another significant event is happening." Xianxia consoled, "Don't worry too much. The broken sea rift is so far from us. People of talent arise continuously in this world, and good will always overcome evil. We will get through this." Guan nodded, but his thoughts were quite the opposite. The power behind the Great Cold Demon Sect had already reached the heavens. As Baizia would say, since ancient times, the Great Cold Demon Sect and other demon sects with significant chi fortune have been acting as the blade of the Holy Court. There are always some matters that the Holy Court can't handle directly. Of course, the Holy Court isn't dark. They simply view things from the perspective of the entire universe and often encounter situations where they must sacrifice some beings or have no choice but to annihilate an area filled with living beings. If the Holy Court has truly abandoned this place, what could be the reason? It surely couldn't be because of the divine exotic realm, right? The divine exotic realm has nothing to do with them. They could separate it out entirely. Guan suspected there was a deeper reason he was unaware of. His divine sense probed, and the life-seizing immortal was not the heaven and earth flying immortal who fought alone against the three divine exotic ghost kings. Instead, it was a carefree primordial immortal. His arrival had interrupted that great battle. Guan watched as the life-seizing immortal placed a treasure pagoda at the edge of the broken sea rift. It grew taller and taller, reaching through the clouds, no less than 100,000 feet tall, quite majestic. The life-seizing immortal then flew into the pagoda. The three divine exotic ghost kings fled into the broken sea rift, followed by the heaven and earth flying immortal, clearly aligned with the life-seizing immortal. Guan was curious to see if any other carefree primordial immortals would take action within the next 100 years. He continued discussing the affairs of the world with Xianxia. They were both minor cultivators in the world of immortal cultivation. When talking about the happenings in the world, they mostly expressed envy. Not long into their conversation, Xianxia excused himself. Guan also got up and went downstairs, ready to discuss the great cold demon sect with the disciples and cultivators in the valley. The shout of the life-seizing immortal had caused an uproar across the world. Wherever there were gathered beings, this matter was being discussed. When Guan arrived at the chess area, Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Stealing the Five Elements were discussing the great cold demon sect with great cultivators from the supreme sect. Other disciples surrounded them, listening intently with tension. Xianxia sat among the crowd as well. Although he rarely spoke, he listened attentively. After Xianxia had spoken with Stealing the Five Elements, the two did not come into conflict. It seemed they had reached some agreement. At the time, Guan hadn't listened because, in his eyes, these two couldn't stir up any trouble. The great cold demon sect has existed for 1,000,000 years. That life-seizing immortal is also a person from the legends. I didn't expect him to still be alive. Now we're really in trouble, lamented Nine-Finger Divine Lord. He didn't mention the Holy Court, clearly very wary of it. 1,000,000 years. The disciples listened with twitching eyelids, unable to fathom how long 1,000,000 years was. The younger ones felt a longing. They hadn't completely resigned themselves to fate yet. They always felt that there was hope. The third Medicine Valley was only the first stage of their entry into the world of immortal cultivation. The world of immortal cultivation is full of stories where those with ordinary talent obtain great opportunities to change their destinies against all odds. Guan also listened intently as if he were listening to a story, occasionally exclaiming with the surrounding disciples or revealing an incredulous expression. Meanwhile, inside the main city of sect, in a mansion, Lu Lingjun visited the courtyard of the Holy Mother of Western Spirit, where teacher and student sat opposite each other. The Great Cold Demon sect is comparable to the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. In terms of heritage, they are even stronger. If the Great Cold Demon sect stands behind the Broken Sea Rift, we are in trouble. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit sighed, bringing up the existence of the Holy Court. This was the first time Lu Lingjun had heard the name of the Holy Court, and she was shocked. How vast is this universe? The Holy Mother of Western Spirit also suspected that this sea area had been abandoned by the Holy Court. Otherwise, the people from the Great Cold Demon sect wouldn't be so unrestrained, even giving out 100 years, clearly wanting large sects to evacuate promptly. Upon hearing this, Lu Lingjun couldn't help asking, 100 years only the immortal cultivation sects can evacuate, right? Will all the myriad living beings who stay behind really die? The Great Cold Demon sect has slaughtered so many living beings. The continents and sea areas affected by the Broken Sea Rift added together only make up a small area of the Great Heaven and Earth. To the Great Cold Demon sect, it's nothing. The Holy Court won't care either. The fall of the beings in this area won't make waves in the entire world, the Holy Mother of Western Spirit said somberly. Lu Lingjun furrowed her brows. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit then said, I need to make a trip back to find out the real reason behind the actions of the Great Cold Demon sect. Lu Lingjun nodded, beginning to consider the worst-case scenario. She was an ascender, so escaping wasn't a problem for her. But having been in the Supreme Sect for so long, she cared about too many people. Her concern was how to help those she had relationships with. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit began to muse about the complexity of the affairs of the world. Initially, she truly thought the divine exotic realm was harming one side. But now it seemed the emergence of the divine exotic realm wasn't simple. Undoubtedly, there was an unimaginably powerful existence struggling behind it. Dark clouds covered the sky, and a continuous drizzle fell onto Immortal Seeking Island. In a courtyard, Guan Yongjian and Hu Shaojian sat together, with Guan listening to Hu Shaojian detail the Great Cold Demon sect. 3 days had passed since the life-seizing immortal's shout. In those 3 days, various sects on the sea had publicly disclosed information about the Great Cold Demon sect, with various pieces of news reaching the listeners on Immortal Seeking Island. Yang Jian listened intently, his expression constantly changing as Hu Shaojian spoke of the Great Cold Demon sect, which appeared to be the most formidable on the demon path, with countless demon immortals within, making it seem invincible. The true calamity had descended. After a long time, when Hu Shaojian paused to sip his tea and moisten his throat, Guan asked, Have you managed to find out anything about the Reincarnation Path Emperor? The Reincarnation Path Emperor, one of Ji Xiaoyu's past lives, was always remembered by Guan, who Xiaojian shook his head, saying, I couldn't find anything. I even feel like this exalted figure doesn't exist. But since you mentioned him, he must indeed exist. It's just that my level is too low, at least within the Immortal Seeking Island there's not a single clue. Guan didn't get angry. He gently moved on from the topic. Hu Xiaojian put down his teacup, his gaze shifted towards Guan, hesitating to speak. After hesitating for a moment, he stood up, walked to the side, then knelt down and began to kowtow to Guan. What are you doing? Guan asked with a frown. Hu Xiaojian looked up, pleading, I beg you, senior, to take me away. The great cold demon sect's power is vast. The upper echelons of Immortal Seeking Island are preparing to evacuate. I am only a nascent soul realm cultivator. Within 100 years, I absolutely cannot escape the range that the great cold demon sect wants to obliterate. Even if by chance I escape, who knows if I can survive elsewhere. Senior, you are a loose immortal. You come and go as you please. Can you take me with you? I will serve you like an ox or a horse. Yang Jian sat on the side, his feelings complex. This was a nascent soul realm cultivator. In the Supreme Sect, this was an existence looked up to by servant disciples, yet he didn't even have the confidence to survive at sea. Guan pondered and then said, Don't be anxious. For now, stay peacefully at Immortal Seeking Island. If the sea powers truly cannot withstand the great cold demon sect, I will take you with me. Before that happens, help me keep an eye on the Sea Protection Mansion. If they truly intend to abandon Immortal Seeking Island, then I will come and take over. Hu Xiaojian was stunned, not expecting Guan to still be concerned about Immortal Seeking Island at this critical moment. Yang Jian glanced at his master. It seemed like his master had no fear of the great cold demon sect. His master referred to himself as a loose immortal. Could it be that loose immortal was not his realm but just his identity? Hu Xiaojian wanted to persuade Guan, but feared offending him, so he could only agree. Guan noticed his concerns and reassured him, Don't underestimate this world. Otherwise, the divine, exotic, resentful ghosts in the sea-breaking rift would have already swept across the oceans, right? Hu Xiaojian felt persuaded by these words and promptly thanked Guan. Guan waved his hand, helping him up, and invited him to sit and speak. Hu Xiaojian continued to talk about the great cold demon sect. He knew a lot about it but nothing about the life-seizing immortal. Guan then began to think about how to control Immortal Seeking Island. Firstly, he must arrange someone to act as a puppet while he stayed hidden. Using the various channels of Immortal Seeking Island, he could collect more medicinal herbs, and besides, it sounded like a fun endeavor. It felt like preparing to play a management game, which he was quite looking forward to. To suppress Immortal Seeking Island, he would need at least a wandering immortal. He had to think carefully about this candidate. Just like that, time swiftly passed and the rain intensified. 2 ancient hours later, Guan left with Yang Jian, returning to the forested mountains of the Supreme Sect. Yang Jian was no longer experiencing the limitless freedom step for the first time, but as his cultivation level increased, he grew more awestruck of his master's divine skills. Master, is there really someone who can confront the great cold demon sect? Yang Jian asked, his words still carrying a hint of cautiousness. He did not dare ask directly about his master's prowess, so he had to beat around the bush. While moving forward, Guan responded, Who knows? At any rate, your master, I'm not sure. Just not sure? Yang Jian was secretly alarmed. Just what was his master's background? Guan was unaware of Yang Jian's thoughts. He had modestly underestimated himself, not expecting it would make Yang Jian even more amazed. Listening to Hu Xiaojian, the great cold demon sect had taken on an unimaginably fearsome and evil persona in Yang Jian's mind, such an existence often being the ultimate antagonist in stories. Knowing that Guan was confident in confronting the great cold demon sect, how could he not be surprised? Jianer, cultivate diligently. Even if we survive this calamity, there will be no shortage of trials ahead. From ancient times until now, every great cultivator has persevered through countless hardships. The greater the crises, the more diligently one must cultivate, Guan said earnestly. Yang Jian nodded, saying, Disciple always keeps this in mind. I will strive to cultivate as diligently as you. How many years had it taken for his master to reach his current height? Yang Jian thought to himself, guessing surely it took tens of thousands of years, No, perhaps his master had even existed longer than the great cold demon sect, merely frolicking in the mortal world. He believed his master wouldn't deceive him. His master surely had also endured countless hardships and diligently cultivated to achieve his current level of cultivation. Guan continued to instruct Yang Jian. Educating a disciple, after all, required occasionally teaching them, making it an enjoyable experience. Yang Jian, unaware of his master's inner thoughts, could feel his master's earnest intentions. Chapter 287. The Longevity Pact. As the year ended, snowflakes danced in the air. Inside the attic, Guan was pouring tea for Yilan, who was recounting her experiences in the subsect. Having not seen each other for many years, Yilan now more than ever exhibited the demeanor of a great cultivator. Cultivators at the divinity transformation realm could become leaders everywhere on the continent, and naturally her aura grew stronger with each passing day. This made Guan find her even more charming. Back then she was always hanging around him, the little girl who always followed him around. Now she had become an existence that stood above tens of thousands, which made him feel not only nostalgic but also immensely proud. Her experiences in the subsect mainly involved power struggles and gaining profit. With LV Baton having paved the way, she always managed to secure victories in various conflicts, and overall she had a smooth journey. After discussing her own experiences, she asked Guan how he had been over the years. Growing various plants, playing chess, and occasionally teasing the disciples for fun. "I'm quite content," Guan said, looking at Yilan with a smile. Yilan raised her eyebrows and asked, "Who is the girl downstairs? You've been wanting to ask that, haven't you?" That's what Guan thought to himself, but he said aloud, "Her identity is not simple. I will only tell you and you mustn't let it slip." The attic had a protective restriction, strong enough to ward off the probing of any cultivator below the divinity transformation realm, so Guan was not afraid of being overheard by Ji Xiaoyu. Yilan nodded expressionlessly. Guan took a deep breath and said, "Her name is Ji Xiaoyu. You understand, right?" Yilan frowned and asked, "Isn't Ji Xiaoyu already deceased?" Ji Xiaoyu had once been a renowned genius, famed for her beauty across the world. Her death had sparked much discussion within the Supreme Sect, and Yilan too had heard about it. She did die, but she has also reincarnated. Guan shared the information he got from stealing the 5 elements, his face full of emotion. Upon hearing this, Yilan too was taken aback. Such oddities existed in the world, and the background of Ji Xiaoyu was far beyond her expectations, even shattering her previous perceptions. Guan cautiously said, "Junior sister, this matter must not be disclosed. Otherwise, it might bring us great trouble involving reincarnation, and the enemies we would attract are extremely formidable. Faced with such entities, the Supreme Sect would have to either submit or be annihilated." Yilan nodded, then exclaimed with emotion, "Honestly, I was just feeling jealous of her, but not anymore. The gap between her and us is too vast, not to mention whether she would take a fancy to you, senior brother. Even if she did, I think it would be a good thing. Haven't you always said that your talents are mediocre? And since your relationship with that senior has been severed, you must cherish her. Perhaps she could change your destiny." As she spoke, her expression grew very serious. Guan was moved by her attitude. Truth be told, due to his experiences in his previous life, Guan felt that it was impossible for someone to consider others completely selflessly. Even love started from individual needs. He had rejected Yilan many times, but she had remained consistent and he didn't want her to suffer losses, as he had always helped her. Of course he was moved by this. At least Yilan had an irreplaceable position in his heart. But he hadn't expected Yilan to hope for his future to the extent of wanting him to cozy up to another woman. The silly girl. Guan glared at Yilan and said irritably, "Cherish what? She and I don't have that kind of relationship. At most we are just Daoist friends, and in her heart, there isn't a place for romantic feelings. Only the immortal path." That was the truth. He could feel Ji Xiaoyu's ambition. Whether in her past life or now, Ji Xiaoyu was not a woman obsessed with romantic love. Otherwise she wouldn't have chosen death to resist a marriage arranged by her family in her previous life. Yilan rolled her eyes at Guan and said, "Senior brother, a woman staying in your building must have a significant background. How could she not have feelings for you? Even if you can't really pursue her, establishing a better relationship with her would still be beneficial for you." Although she had reached the divinity transformation cultivation level, She still felt that her path to immortality had come to an end. At least she no longer dared to hope for longevity, but she hoped Guan could have that chance. The reason? She couldn't really say, she just hoped for Guan to have a better life and she felt he deserved it. From a young age, she always believed that her senior brother was worthy of all the good fortune in the world. Even when Guan rejected her, she wasn't angry. She liked her senior brother. Why should he have to comply with her wishes? Forget it, senior brother. I rather prefer a peaceful life. If she wishes to stay in the Third Medicine Valley, I will not treat her badly, and if she wants to leave, I won't keep her. She and I are ultimately not people of the same world. We should not hinder each other's paths. Guan shook his head and said. This too was his heartfelt truth. His goal was longevity, not marriage and children. Yilan blinked, unsure whether to feel happy or to sigh. Senior brother, if you don't achieve longevity in this lifetime, would you accept me? Yilan asked. Guan thought for a moment, then said, if neither you nor I achieve longevity, then let's just live out a mortal's life in the last 100 years. A mortal's life spans only a century, and before that, let both of us strive for the immortal path. Who knows what might be possible? Although I seek a stable life, I have not given up on cultivation. Yilan smiled upon hearing this, gazing at Guan, and said dreamily, Senior brother, with you saying this, I suddenly feel like the life limit isn't so scary. Guan raised his hand to ruffle her hair, messing it up under her scolding gaze before he finally stopped. Later, Yilan brought up the Great Cold Demon Sect. She had also learned quite a lot about the Great Cold Demon Sect, which made her very anxious. She feared that the continent might not survive this calamity, so she had come back early to see Guan to avoid regrets. Of course, she still held hope that being Sword Venerable Fudao. This was also the reason why most disciples of the Supreme Sect hadn't panicked. Over the years, the protection of Sword Venerable Fudao gave them faith and confidence to fantasize about and tackle all adversities. As long as Sword Venerable Fudao didn't abandon them or be defeated, they would surely be able to overcome the calamity. In the end, Guan invited Yilan to stay, and naturally she did not refuse. After night fell, Guan took Yilan around the valley and even took her to watch others play chess. He also called Yang Jian over and had Yang Jian pay respects to Yilan. Yang Jian's attitude was very respectful, sensing that his master treated Yilan differently. His master calling him over must have a profound meaning. Could she be not a martial aunt but the mistress? Thinking this, Yang Jian also felt joyful, suddenly sensing that his master wasn't as unapproachable and even had a human side. That night, Yilan stayed at the Third Medicine Valley, occupying Guan's room. While Guan read, she practiced qi absorption cultivation. By late night, when Yilan opened her eyes, she saw Guan still engrossed in his book, the candlelight illuminating his face, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. This was quite nice. Yilan watched Guan for a while before closing her eyes. As dawn neared, the situation changed. Senior brother, you must be tired, let me give you a shoulder rub. Why would I be tired? You're the one who's been cultivating all this time. It's fine. I'm at a higher cultivation level, I'm not tired. Is this a shoulder rub? I'm just checking your body, afraid you might develop some problems from your usual routines. Wait, don't touch any lower. Senior brother. How could your junior sister harbor any inappropriate thoughts towards you? I have a unique sorcery that can nurture your chi blood. That's not okay, not there. At dawn, Guan descended the stairs with a complex expression, and Yilan followed behind, her face radiant with a brilliant smile. Ji Xiaoyu emerged from the room, her gaze shifting toward the two, her brows slightly knitted. After descending, Guan introduced the two women to each other but didn't talk much. Yilan then followed Guan to practice exercises. Ji Xiaoyu stood still watching. After a while, her brows relaxed. Yilan planned to leave after the spring festival. Guan would take her with him to the Outer Gate City and the Mystic Valley, but not to Tinya Valley or other places. She didn't ask much, thinking that it was good for her senior brother to have secrets, indicating that he still concealed his identity. Naturally, she hoped her senior brother would become even more formidable. Chapter 288. 9 Profound True Fire, Calamity from the Sky. This year's spring festival felt warmer than in previous years for Guan, thanks to the company of Yilan. The day after the festival ended, Yilan left. She did not wish to become lost in the presence of her senior brother, as cultivating her immortal path was a major life event for her. At this stage, her main task was to diligently practice her cultivation. Despite the declarations of the life-seizing Immortal from the great cold demon sect casting a shadow over the lands, it had not impacted the overall structure of the world. By the following year, the Immortal cultivation world had returned to its former state, though various sects had begun dispatching more disciples to explore overseas. Years passed one after another, sunsets followed by moonrises. Third Medicine Valley saw disciples advancing each year, with new disciples joining, constantly increasing in number. This was because the Supreme Sect itself was growing stronger, which led to an increase in the number of servant disciples. These servant disciples needed positions to earn spirit stones. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Guan stood by the window, using his divine sense to survey a distant great battle. A great cultivator had gone to challenge the life-seizing Immortal, even a heaven and earth-flying Immortal. Alas, he did not even get to see the face of the life-seizing Immortal, being suppressed by his disciple. This battle was watched by countless cultivators and demons. Not all beings wished to flee this region of the mortal world, especially sects that followed the righteous path, shouldering the responsibility to protect all living beings. Over the past decade, more than once had heaven and earth-flying Immortals challenged the life-seizing Immortal, each time without exception being overwhelmed by the life-seizing Immortal's disciple. Advancing to the tower had become a mere wishful thinking. The name of life-seizing Immortal's pagoda spread far and wide. Known as the soul-calming pagoda, it was also an Immortal Path supreme treasure. Guan shook his head as he watched, the defeat of the heaven and earth-flying Immortal obvious, proving that he was not the savior of this region of the mortal world. He turned and went downstairs, feeling a presence entering the valley. It was the Holy Mother of Western Spirit from the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. The Holy Mother had found Xianxia, taking him to a secluded corner to speak, for which Xianxia had even set up a restriction. Inside the Supreme Sect, no one's divine sense could penetrate the barrier created by Xianxin's restriction, except for Guan. Did you get that clear? Xianxia asked, referring to matters concerning the Great Cold Demon Sect. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit took a deep breath and said, "This matter involves a holy king from the Holy Court, and though he cannot represent the entire decision of the Holy Court, this holy king has far-reaching connections and even the Buddhism sect does not wish to offend. After all, no one knows when Xingtian will emerge from seclusion." Holy King. Xianxia frowned and then asked, "What in this region of the mortal world could be of interest to a being like the Holy King?" The Holy Mother responded, "I am not entirely sure myself. I only found out that it has something to do with the reincarnation of a great power from the Holy Court. That great power might be a rival of the Holy King, reincarnated here in this region of the mortal world." Xianxin's frown deepened. Looking at him, the Holy Mother continued, "The situation has gone beyond redeeming. The Buddhism sect does not wish to risk involvement. Let's head back soon." Xianxia scoffed. The Buddhism sect doesn't want to risk involvement? What a joke! Whatever happened to universal salvation? The Holy Mother was taken aback by Xianxin's tone, clearly detecting the sarcasm in it. Something was off. Xianxia, who used to take pride in being part of the Bitter Sea Buddha sect, had never spoken this way before. "You go back, I am staying at the Supreme Sect," Xianxia stated seriously. The Holy Mother wanted to persuade him otherwise, but Xianxia took his leave with determined steps. What has actually happened? The Holy Mother stared at Xianxin's departing figure, filled with confusion. Her cultivation level was lower than Xianxin's, and her status was not as prominent, so she couldn't forcefully take Xianxia back. Thus, she refrained from further persuasion and could only take the news back to the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Elsewhere, Guan, walking towards a certain garden area, was also pondering the intelligence brought by the Holy Mother of Western Spirit. Holy King, reincarnation of a great power. Upon hearing about the reincarnation of a great power, his first thought was Ji Xiaoyu. However, upon reflection, it might not be Ji Xiaoyu. Ji Xiaoyu had reincarnated countless times, and if it truly were the rival of that Holy King, why hadn't the Holy King acted sooner? Moreover, he was curious about which role the Master of Divine Exotic Realm played in this feud. Perhaps he needed to seek an opportunity to discuss this with the Master of Divine Exotic Realm. Inside a dimly lit chamber, Zhang Buku put down his great axe. The strength energy around him began to dissipate, and his constantly swirling white hair gradually settled. He exhaled deeply, eyeing the great axe in his hand, his brow slightly furrowed. At that moment, footsteps approached. Zhang Buku clenched the axe tightly, causing it to vanish as he turned to look toward the entrance of the cave. He saw the master of divine exotic realm approaching slowly, and perhaps it was Zhang Buku's illusion, but he felt the master seemed weaker than before. Master! Zhang Buku raised his hand in greeting and spoke. Throughout these years, the master of divine exotic realm had been conscientious in teaching him. At least Zhang Buku believed the master truly treated him like a direct disciple, not only instructing him in cultivation but occasionally also bringing him heavenly materials and treasures to enhance his ghost body and resist the backlash of exotic forces. The master of divine exotic realms stopped before him, sizing him up and nodded slightly, saying, "Not bad, you are mastering the exotic powers." Zhang Buku couldn't help but ask, "Master, are you all right?" The master of divine exotic realm revealed a smile, though it was a chilling one as he said, "Master is naturally fine, but there is something I need to ask of you, may I?" "What is it?" Zhang Buku did not agree immediately but asked instead, his mind alert as he feared the master of divine exotic realm might be plotting against the mysterious being that had been helping him in secret. The master of divine exotic realm lifted his right hand, within which a golden flame appeared, the light brightening the chamber. Zhang Buku's expression shifted slightly as he stared at the golden flame, unable to look away. The master of divine exotic realm spoke, "This is the 9 profound true fire, a flame of an extraordinary being. After inheriting it, you will possess a divine skill that will help you survive better. When you encounter the reincarnation of that being, the 9 profound true fire will act uniquely, letting you know at that time." "Who is that being?" Zhang Buku couldn't help but ask. The master of divine exotic realm responded, "He is a being whose cultivation far surpasses mine, and his status in the mortal world is beyond your imagination. I am passing this flame to you, hoping that you will find him in the future and protect him as much as possible. He will be the chance for us to overturn our fate." Zhang Buku was stunned. The master of divine exotic realm looked at the flame in his hand, his gaze wandering, then said, "The truth is, my existence is also for dealing with this being. But now that my backing is prepared to forsake me, I have no choice but to turn against it." Zhang Buku frowned and asked, "Master, who is your backing?" The master of divine exotic realm sighed. "It is an existence that can manipulate beings at will, akin to an immortal god in the hearts of the masses. Not only me but many forces serve him, including the continent you come from. The holy land of the 7-star spirit realm also serves him and helped me break the heaven and earth barriers, opening up the sea-breaking rift." The 7-star spirit realm. Zhang Buku naturally knew of this power. He hadn't imagined that the long-destroyed 7-star spirit realm was still connected to the sea-breaking rift. "Well, I can't tell you too much, lest you invoke temporarily insurmountable karma. Just remember, when you encounter someone that causes the 9 profound true fire to act unusually, you must support him. He will be the greatest opportunity you will ever encounter, and the only hope for you to be free of exotic forces," the master of divine exotic realm said, squinting at Zhang Buku with a serious look. Zhang Buku frowned and asked, "And what about you, master?" The master of divine exotic realm placed his palm on Zhang Buku's chest, injecting the 9 profound true fire into his body. The true fire wafted, numerous sparks flashing across the master of divine exotic realm's face, making his expression look even more terrifying. He spoke in a sinister tone, "I have become a discarded piece and fate has already presented itself before my eyes." Zhang Buku opened his mouth to say something, but the raging 9 profound true fire surged through his body, rendering him speechless. Soon his consciousness drifted into confusion. In a grand hall flickering with firelight, an old man in a black robe sat on a lotus pedestal, which was a black lotus swirling with dark red flames. He had a powerful presence, his unbound hair adding to his imposing aura. Looking up at the ceiling of the grand hall, one could see dark red flames churning like an inverted ocean, constantly surging. This was inside the soul-calming pagoda. And this black-robed old man was the life-seizing immortal of the great cold demon sect. Suddenly the life-seizing immortal spoke, "Disciple, put some pressure on them." His voice echoed within the hall as if many people were shouting in unison. Soon a voice came from outside the hall, Yes. Simultaneously, at the top of the soul-calming pagoda, a white-robed Daoist who had been meditating slowly stood up. Holding a horsetail whisk, he was tall and emaciated with white hair arranged under a Daoist hat. He looked down at the vast sea, his expression indifferent. The soul-calming pagoda was located directly above the sea-breaking rift, a massive rift that stretched dozens of miles wide with no visible ends. The white-robed Daoist looked into the distance, raised his left hand to his mouth and began to chant softly. As he chanted, visible ripples spread out in the space around him. Seconds later, his right hand suddenly waved the whisk. With this motion, the seas on either side of the sea-breaking rift abruptly rose, forming towering waves with the potential to engulf the heavens. He waved the whisk again, and the terrifying waves on both sides swept uncontrollably toward the distance. After doing all of this, the white-robed Daoist paused, then looked up at the sky and waved his whisk toward the heavens 3 times. At dusk, Guan rode on the blood prison Great Saint into the entrance of the third Medicine Valley, followed by Jian and Lingtian, who walked behind with a bruised face, resembling a defeated rooster. "Master, won't this lad be ruined?" the blood prison Great Saint couldn't help but ask. His tone was not one of concern but rather filled with mockery. Lingtian, hearing this, glared at him. Guan spoke, "If he can't endure, he can leave on his own." Years ago, when he had visited Tianya Valley, Luo Hun had even asked him to bring a message, hoping Lingtian would return to the palace. However, Lingtian did not wish to go back. Although he often got beaten, he was indeed getting stronger. Defeating Jian had become his obsession. Just as Lingtian was about to speak, he suddenly sensed something and looked up, his eyes widening in shock. Guan, Jian and the blood prison Great Saint all looked up, and the disciples in the valley did the same, their expressions increasingly changing as if they were witnessing something terrifying. Chapter 289. Unbelievable Methods. At dusk, the sky was a fiery red as meteors from outer space streaked across, creating a magnificent scene. As these meteors fell, a vast heavenly fire descended, giving all beings the feeling that the sky was collapsing. What is that? How can there be such a huge fire in the sky? Will it affect us? Don't worry, we are within the Supreme Sect, protected by the Sect Protecting Formation. Could it be the demon cultivators from the Great Cold Demon Sect causing trouble? The disciples within the Third Medicine Valley engaged in a heated discussion, and the great cultivators who had been playing chess stood up and vanished from their spots. The 9-fingered Divine Lord looked up, frowning. Sitting opposite him, stealing the 5 elements, remarked, "This divine power is no ordinary feat." The 9-fingered Divine Lord looked at stealing the 5 elements and asked, "You've been traveling a lot these years, what exactly have you been searching for?" Facing his inquiry, stealing the 5 elements did not respond but simply pointed upwards towards the sky. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the valley, Guan was riding on the back of the blood prison Great Saint, also looking at the sky. He could feel that the meteors and the sea of fire in the sky were transformations of mana, deployed by someone possessing great divine power at the heaven and earth flying immortal level, affecting a vast area. It seemed that the century-old agreement was merely an ultimatum. During this period, the Great Cold Demon Sect would continue to attack, forcing the common people to flee. Of course, there was another possibility that they sought to force out a specific individual they were searching for. Due to personal vengeance, the commoners suffered, giving Guan a different understanding of the Holy Court. The Holy Court overall had good intentions, but inevitably had its corrupt members. Perhaps their way of thinking differed from Guan's. They could protect the common people but also ignore them. Jian glanced at Guan and seeing his calm demeanor, he felt reassured. With his master around, even if the sky fell, he wouldn't be afraid. Lingtian approached Jian and discussed the strange phenomenon in the sky with him. Guan patted the back of the blood prison Great Saint, signaling him to move forward. As the blood prison Great Saint took a step, a light curtain rose in the horizon, visible in all directions. It was the Supreme Sect Protecting Great Formation. That was quick. Guan was secretly pleased. The Supreme Sect had not faced tribulations in many years, yet remaining vigilant indicated that the high ranks weren't overly dependent on Sword Venerable Fudao. Soon, the entire Supreme Sect was enveloped by the light curtain of the Sect Protecting Great Formation, providing relief to all the cultivators within. Various sects and cities across the world activated their large formations, but inevitably, there were places that remained unprotected and many beings in those places were vulnerable. In the North Sea Mountains, at the mountain god temple, sage Xianxia sat on the ground, gazing at the strange phenomenon in the sky, furrowing his brows. His concern was not for his safety, but rather for the well-being of the common people across the world. How could mere mortals withstand this sweeping blaze? Sage Xianxia turned to look at a stone statue in the courtyard, one he had carved himself depicting the mountain god. Although he saw the mountain god once a month, in his heart he always felt a great distance from the divine. He turned back and began to kowtow to the divine statue of the mountain god. As meteorites continued plunging towards the earth, the fire enveloping the sky drew closer, intensifying the fiery hue between heaven and earth. Then, all the flowers, plants and trees across the continent emitted flickers of green light, swiftly rising upward like sparks growing stronger rapidly. A farmer clutching a hoe in the mountains was surrounded by the green light coming from all directions, causing him to panic. In the cities, terrified civilians saw trees within their courtyards trembling and releasing green light orbs that floated up towards the sky. Within the palace, Li Xiandao stood at the entrance of the imperial study, observing the unusual appearance of the flora, his expression subtle. At that moment, beings across the continent, including demons, were startled by the surrounding phenomena as flowers, plants and trees were ubiquitous. In the Third Medicine Valley, Guan dismounted and looked around. The vegetation within the supreme sect hadn't emitted green light, so the disciples were all puzzled by the phenomenon in the sky, unaware of another spectacular sight beyond the supreme sect. However, as the green light from plants everywhere rose to a certain height, even the cultivators inside the supreme sect could see it. Various discussions erupted among them. Guan stood under a pavilion watching this scenario unfold. Xiaoyu also emerged from the house and joined him. "It seems someone is protecting this continent," Xiaoyu said, her eyes reflecting the green light rising to meet the massive inferno falling from the sky, as if two worlds were about to collide in a mesmerizing display. The upper half of Gu An's face was illuminated by the fire, while the lower half was tinged with green. He asked in astonishment, "You mean to say a cultivator is behind this? How high must their cultivation level be?" Xiaoyu gave Guan a look, although she didn't think Guan had a vast cultivation. But this guy couldn't be this clueless. Guan often brought Yang Jian out, who was growing rapidly, showing that Guan was not simple. Regardless of what Guan concealed, his knowledge was not something ordinary cultivators could match. "Perhaps it was Sword Venerable Fudao who made a move," Xiaoyu said softly, her gaze returning to the horizon. "Good guess." Guan mentally gave Xiaoyu a thumbs up, his eyes still fixed on the sky. Under the gaze of all beings on the continent, the vast green light collided with the sea of fire, and following a brief somber moment, the sky radiated intensely bright light, like endless fireworks exploding. After the brief silence, the earth trembled and strong winds fell from the sky, though not enough to threaten the land and mountains. The creatures across the land all sighed in relief, now understanding that the mysterious green light was there to protect them, to block the descending heavenly fire. However, they didn't know that not all continents and islands had protectors. Guan protected only the continent he was on, and while the beings there were excited and grateful, countless others perished in despair. At the soul-calming pagoda atop the pagoda, a white-robed Daoist suddenly opened his eyes, expressing surprise with a grunt. He attempted to divine the situation but couldn't make any accurate predictions, his expression growing increasingly bizarre. He suddenly became interested and then vanished from the spot. Far away in the supreme sect, Guan was chatting with Xiaoyu when he suddenly sensed a rapidly approaching presence, sighing involuntarily. "Why must someone always be looking for death? I'm going to check on Mystic Valley, we'll talk later," Guan said, heading towards the transmission array platform. Xiaoyu was not puzzled and looked up at the sky alone, admiring the powerful divine skills of Sword Venerable Fudao. Underneath a nearby tree, stealing the 5 elements and the 9-finger Divine Lord, sitting opposite each other at a chessboard, also looked up at the sky, paying no attention to Guan stealing the 5 elements, spoke. "The trouble has ultimately been drawn here. The guy has arrived." The 9-finger Divine Lord turned to him asking, "Who is this guy?" "A pupil of life-seizing Immortal, the real person Bai Hong, a renowned genius from the great cold demon sect with unfathomable cultivation, stealing the 5 elements, responded. The 9-fingered divine lord's face subtly changed. Clearly he had heard of Bai Hong's name. Stealing the 5 elements chuckled. There's going to be a show to watch. Geniuses all have one flaw: excess confidence. Not far off, Xianxia, while staring at the sky, was also listening to Stealing the 5 Elements conversation. He couldn't help but think of the hand that had been placed on his shoulder that night and began to sympathize with Bai Hong. There were many hidden great powers in the world. No matter the cultivation level, one should never underestimate this world. This was the greatest realization Xianxia had after leaving the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. In another place, under the red dawn sky, Bai Hong rapidly flew through, unfazed by the sweeping fire, as he passed over vast expanses of water without looking down. His gaze had fixed on a distant continent. Within his divine range, many great cultivators were resisting his divine power to protect various beings. Yet that particular continent was special. Its methods piqued his interest, and moreover he was unable to deduce the cause and effect of its mana. Perhaps the individual behind it was related to the person his master sought. Thinking of this, Bai Hong's eyes gleamed with anticipation. He was acting not only on behalf of his master but also to seize an opportunity for himself. Snap! A hand suddenly pressed onto his shoulder, bringing his full-speed flight to an immediate halt, causing his mana and chi blood to surge chaotically, and he even felt a strong discomfort as if his primordial spirit was about to leave his body. When he tried to break free, he was horrified to discover that he had lost control over his body and soul. He couldn't even achieve primordial spirit emergence, which made him widen his eyes and instinctively panic. In an instant, Bai Hong theorized many possibilities. Bai Hong, a 150,908-year-old 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal, is lamentable to die here. Guan looked at Bai Hong's lifespan and thought so. Guan didn't employ his soul-capturing skill but prepared to directly annihilate Bai Hong. He intentionally allowed Bai Hong to wait for a few moments to fully experience this despair, which also served as a punishment for his crimes. Bai Hong felt the pressure on his shoulder lessen and was about to speak when the hand suddenly tightened. With a squeeze from Guan, Bai Hong instantly turned to ash, his soul dispersing without a sound. He then disappeared from the spot. Back in the forest around Mystic Valley, Guan pretended to inspect medicinal herbs, and a notification popped up before his eyes. He successfully seized 38,000 years of lifespan. Not too bad. Guan wasn't worried about life-seizing Immortal coming for revenge. If he came, Guan would kill him. Could the carefree primordial Immortal threaten the divine Immortal of wondrous Dharma? If a stronger presence appeared and he was uncertain of his chances, he would flee. So far, it seemed unlikely that the Holy King would make a move as it would hurt his image. Otherwise, why wouldn't he personally search for his enemy's reincarnation? Being able to summon the great cold demon sect showed that the Holy King had his reservations. The sea of fire in the sky lasted for 30 minutes before completely dissipating. The green light enveloping the continent transformed into a sea of clouds, dispersing with the wind, and night fell. Although the world had darkened, the spirits of all beings remained unsettled for a long time. When Guan returned to the 3rd Medicine Valley, Xiaoyu had already returned to her house. He could only join a group of disciples gathered in the chess-playing area, who were discussing the earlier phenomena. With Stealing the 5 Elements and the 9-fingered Divine Lord present, the disciples could greatly expand their knowledge and also learn about the incredible methods of Sword Venerable Fudao. Chapter 290. The Identity of the Senior Inside the Soul-Calming Pagoda. Life-seizing Immortal opened his eyes, a frown creasing his brow, his eyes filled with doubt and suspicion. Why has his aura ceased? Life-seizing Immortal began to cast spells and calculate. He did not consider the possibility that Bai Hong had really died. After all, he knew how high his disciple's cultivation level was. Within the same realm, Bai Hong had the power to suppress 3 divine exotic ghost kings single-handedly, which showed how terrifying his strength was. Even if he encountered a carefree primordial Immortal, he would not die without a trace. However, no matter how he calculated, he could not deduce Bai Hong's whereabouts. Bai Hong's karmic ties were still fading away. This indicated that Bai Hong had most likely fallen and moreover had been scattered to the winds, with the heaven and earth rules erasing the marks of his existence. Life-seizing Immortal's eyebrows knitted tightly together, his heart filled with shock and anger. Had a carefree primordial immortal made a move? To achieve such a feat, it would certainly not be a low-level carefree primordial immortal. The first thing life-seizing immortal thought of was a being from the Holy Court. How could such a formidable existence hide in this mortal world region? In life-seizing immortal's mind, the strongest beings in this mortal world region were at most in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. The sex here merely touched upon powers from outer heaven. A master of divine exotic realm was sufficient to suppress this mortal world region for so many years. How could a carefree primordial immortal possibly be lurking here? Wait. Life-seizing immortal suddenly thought of the Seven Stars spirit realm. Although his impression of the Seven Stars spirit realm was mediocre, he had some recollection. The Seven Stars spirit realm had always curried favor with the Holy King he supported. The Holy King disdained the Seven Stars spirit realm, but some under the Holy King had received benefits from the Seven Stars spirit realm. To some extent, one could say the Seven Stars spirit realm was a force on the same side as him. He remembered a Daoist friend mentioning that the Seven Stars spirit realm had sought help before. However, the Daoist friend thought the Seven Stars spirit realm was not significant enough to warrant his intervention, so he assigned them a task. Consequently, just as the Seven Stars spirit realm had assisted the divine exotic realm's emergence, it was dismantled because some residual forces still existed, so his Daoist friend didn't think much of it, assuming it was just a local power struggle. Now it occurred to him, could it be that this mortal world region was hiding something? Could it have something to do with that reincarnated being? Life-seizing immortal's eyes flickered not with fear but with a hint of delight. The massacre of the common people was not his main goal. All of this was to force out the reincarnated being. Now that signs had begun to show, how could he not be pleased? Immediately he took out an ancient bronze oil lamp and cast spells towards the wick. It's time to call the old fogies together. The catastrophe triggered by Bai Hong had consequences far and wide, its extent immeasurable. The continent where the supreme sect resided was spared from catastrophe, leading many sects to speculate that it was Sword Venerable Fudeo's doing, causing his name to spread like wildfire across the continent once again. When the beings of the continent were excited and in awe, the sea was deadly silent. Numerous islands and landmasses had been turned into seas of fire. Could ordinary immortal cultivation sects withstand divine powers unleashed by Bai Hong? Even if the sects formed their formations in time, they could not hold back the sky-high flames. This was one of the reasons Guan had taken action. This heavenly fire caused a third of all creatures in the mortal world region to die, a staggeringly large number. After the disaster had passed on the seventh day, Guan came alone to Immortal-seeking Island, where the atmosphere within was grave, with significantly fewer cultivators coming and going, and a tense mood pervading the streets. Judging by the buildings within the city, it had not suffered from the heavenly fire's onslaught, but the surrounding seascape was littered with countless dead fish and demonic creatures, showing that Immortal-seeking Island was within the reach of the heavenly fire as well. The divine skills of a heaven and earth flying immortal were enough to obliterate all beings. Guan called over Zhou Xian, who heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing him. "Elder, I'm so glad you've come." Zhou Xian's tone held a hint of resentment. 7 days earlier he truly thought he was going to die on Immortal-seeking Island. Though he had a narrow escape, he trembled with fear every day, dreading the sudden arrival of another catastrophe. Guan teased, "That's scared." Zhou Xian nodded, "How could I not be? Did you see that great fire? It was terrifying, blotting out the sky. Just imagining the cultivation level of the person behind it scares me." He wanted to say it might far surpass that of a loose immortal, for there were many loose immortals on Immortal-seeking Island, and he had occasionally witnessed loose immortals in combat, which allowed him to make comparisons. But then he thought of Guan being a loose immortal and immediately held his tongue. "Don't worry," Guan consoled, "evil has never triumphed over good. The person behind the scenes will definitely face retribution." In fact, the orchestrator of this catastrophe, Bai Hong, was already dead. The reason Guan had come so late was to guard against a sudden assault from Life-seizing Immortal on the Supreme Sect. Life-seizing Immortal had not shown up, and given his capabilities he must have known of Bai Hong's demise. His absence likely meant he was plotting something. Guan felt there was a good chance he was shaking the tree to see what falls. The Great Cold Demon Sect, after all, was a colossal force in the world, with countless cultivators whose numbers were difficult to estimate. Later, Guan followed Hu Shaojian around to learn the situation on Immortal Seeking Island. According to Hu Shaojian, after experiencing this calamity, the island master was clearly planning to abandon Immortal Seeking Island. He had already instructed people to transport part of his property and disciples away, and within the Sea Protection Mansion, everyone was in a state of panic, with cultivators like Hu Shaojian unsure of where to go. Previously, Immortal Seeking Island was their home and their greatest support. The Sea Protection Mansion would not take them with them. After hearing this, Guan did not offer an opinion but asked Hu Shaojian to take him to purchase medicinal herbs, which made Hu Shaojian even more nervous. He feared this was Guan's last visit to Immortal Seeking Island. An hour later, the two arrived at Hu Xiaojian's courtyard, and after Guan sat down, Hu Shaojian immediately poured wine for him. Guan did not refuse, and his attitude made Hu Shaojian feel somewhat more at ease. Only after Hu Shaojian had poured the wine did Guan speak. "Rest assured, I truly wish to obtain Immortal Seeking Island. Soon I will send a wandering immortal to take over Immortal Seeking Island, and then your standing within the Sea Protection Mansion will rise. You, on the other hand, should diligently cultivate so in the future you can be worthy of a high position." Wandering immortal? Hu Shaojian trembled slightly, tentatively asking, "Elder, might I know who you truly are?" Guan, being only with a loose immortal cultivation level but able to invite a wandering immortal, suggested that Guan had the backing of a great power. This was a pleasant surprise for Hu Shaojian. No matter how strong one person was, they could not compete with a vast force. Guan replied, "It's better for you not to inquire about my identity. Knowing too much is of no benefit to you. Even if we truly can't withstand an attack from life-seizing immortal in the future, I will take you away. I have a place where you can live in peace. However, before that happens, I want to take a gamble. What if a great power manifests from the sea to crush that life-seizing immortal?" Hu Shaojian nodded vigorously. Whatever the case, his job was to cling to Guan's coattails. Of course, deep down he believed life-seizing immortal was unbeatable. The previous heavenly fire had left too deep of a scar on his psyche, and thinking about it still frightened him. "Elder, what do you need me to do now?" Hu Shaojian asked respectfully. Chapter 291. Do you want to join the Great Cold Demon Sect? Guan had stayed in Hu Xiaojian's residence for an ancient hour. After he left, Hu Shaojian was brimming with excitement, and his face was a bouquet of smiles. The predecessor had entrusted him with so many matters, which assuredly meant he wouldn't easily forsake Immortal Seeking Island. He hadn't deceived him. Moreover, what need had the predecessor to deceive him? He was just a minor cultivator at the nascent soul realm. If the predecessor wished not to take him, a single stern glance would have sufficed to silence any further pleas from him. Meanwhile, Guan had returned to the premises of the Supreme Sect, pondering as he walked into the third Medicine Valley, which wandering immortal should assist him. Wandering immortals were not minor cultivators. How could one easily control them? The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord was not an option, for Guan feared exposing himself, given that the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord had been to Immortal Seeking Island. Neither Xianxia nor stealing the 5 elements were reliable. Guan was not in a rush. There's still time. If need be, he could use the Mortal Jade to sway someone, asking Mortal World Peak to dispatch a wandering immortal to Immortal Seeking Island to assist him. Now, as the Peak Master of Mortal World Peak, which was rivaled only by Great Cold Demon Sect in strength, and surpassed it in heritage, he felt Mortal World Peak would not fear the Great Cold Demon Sect. The Great Cold Demon Sect needed to do the Holy Court's dirty work to survive, whereas Mortal World Peak was different. It could hold office in the Holy Court. Over the long years, Mortal World Peak had sent how many immortals to the Holy Court? Guan believed Mortal World Peak would not fear the Great Cold Demon Sect. Of course, Mortal World Peak would not oppose Great Cold Demon Sect unless sufficient benefits tempted them to dare offend both the sect and its backing, the Holy King. Reflecting on this, Guan suddenly felt sentimental. No matter how high one's cultivation realm, one could not escape the web of relationships and favors. Only those strong enough to disregard the entire immortal path could act recklessly and willfully. The karmic ties of the world were too complex, with the karma of all beings interlinked in a tangled mesh. Even the weakest beings, when followed through their karmic associations, were connected to immensely powerful entities. Guan surveyed Medicine Valley and did not spot Nine-Finger Divine Lord or stealing the 5 elements, but found Xianxia, who was engrossed in studying Journey to the West. He could not understand Xianxin's fascination with Journey to the West, and felt that he had grown increasingly distant from the Bitter Sea Buddha sect, barely mentioning Buddhism these days. Guan did not disturb Xianxia but instead headed towards his loft. Compared to worrying about the affairs of the world, what to read next concerned him more. With strange occurrences being commonplace in books through the ages. Recently, Guan took pleasure in reading histories. 5 years later, 210-year-old Guan practiced his exercises in Mystic Valley and glanced at his attribute panel, realizing he was short just under 600,000 years from a 2 billion-year lifespan compared to others' understanding of their own cultivation level. Guan felt a greater sense of achievement watching those numbers of lifespan. But was it really just lifespan? These numbers were clearly his cultivation. After morning practice, Lu Jujiao approached Guan seeking guidance on the primordial reincarnation skill. Since lifting his cultivation restriction, his maximum lifespan had broken through to 410 years. Consequently, Guan taught him a more potent primordial reincarnation skill. Despite his diligent practice over the many years, he still had much to learn about the technique. Guan listened and then patiently guided him, enlightening Lu Jujiao with a few words which left him thrilled. Through the primordial reincarnation skill, he was sure his senior brother was no ordinary person and clearly also practiced this cultivation technique. With the access to medicinal herbs his senior brother had, he was bound to far surpass him. After imparting his advice, Guan turned and departed. Lu Jujiao didn't follow, instead standing still and savoring his words. Guan walked into the forest and followed the path leading to the 8 scenic caves. By now, the 8 scenic caves were no longer a secret needing concealment, with Lu Jujiao aware of his secret abode beneath Mystic Valley. Given the chance, Lu Jujiao would watch over the disciples entering the forest, anxious lest any covet his senior brother's cave. Mystic Valley was never short of spies. Guan arrived within the 8 scenic caves, first picking ripe medicinal herbs, then directing the poison corpse to plant anew. The origins of myriad poison mystic skill left by Jiang Qiong had started to bear fruit. Although he couldn't exploit the poison corpse to seize life from the herbs, sowing was straightforward without too much concern. He lay down under a green vine tree, and quickly 2 tendrils stretched over his shoulders and began massaging them. The green vine tree possessed spiritual wisdom, but on ordinary days, it preferred silence. Guan didn't press it. Rather, he relished the tranquility of life in the 8 scenic caves. Accustomed to life in Medicine Valley, taking the time to be alone in the 8 scenic caves was also enjoyable. He planned to stay overnight as someone would visit him that evening. After finding a comfortable position, he pulled out a history book purchased from Immortal Seeking Island, recording the rise and fall of a powerful force. Time swiftly passed. Until late at night, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Guan remained seated and did not even cast a glance that way. Soon, a figure approached him accompanied by a faint fragrance. The visitor stood with her hands on her hips, clad in an exquisite purple robe, ornate with jade beads on her belt. Her long hair casually tied and 2 wooden hairpins inserted, her celestial beauty cloaked behind errant strands of black hair, a subtle smile adorning her face, and her eyes sparkling with mischievous delight. Guan lifted his head to look at her, appraising her, then chuckled, "Long time no see. How is it you seem younger? Did you practice some forbidden art?" The person standing before him was none other than Jiang Qiong, the creator of the 8 scenic caves. Zhuhua sect, founded by Jiang Qiong, was now a top sect in the immortal cultivation world, even collaborating with the Supreme sect. Of course, Zhuhua sect's overall strength didn't yet match the Supreme sect. "What nonsense, your martial master already appears youthful." Jiang Qiong glared at Guan, then slid off her shoes, placing her bare feet on the grass. She stretched languidly and sighed. "This place still feels comfortable after so many years. Just like home." Guan stood up and chuckled. "I've kept that coffin of yours. Want to lie inside for a while? Looking for a beating?" Jiang Qiong raised her hand to strike Guan, who promptly dodged. She huffed and then inquired, "Little brat, feeling anxious lately?" Guan asked curiously, "Why would you think so?" The life-seizing immortal from the Great Cold Demon sect declared he would wipe out all life. "How can you not be anxious? You're the one who fears death the most." Well, sure, it is worrying, but what use is angst? When the sky falls, there are tall ones like you to hold it up. Guan spread his hands and spoke, eliciting a chuckle from Zhang Qiong, seeing him still as light-hearted as ever. Zhang Qiong took a step closer and whispered, "Would you like to join the Great Cold Demon sect?" Guan gave her a peculiar look. He didn't always keep an eye on Zhang Qiong, only sending his divine sense her way occasionally when she came to mind. Upon sensing no danger, he would swiftly retract his focus. He hadn't expected Zhang Qiong to establish ties with the Great Cold Demon sect. How did she manage that? Guan began to explore Zhang Qiong's karmic ties while asking, "You know someone from the Great Cold Demon sect?" A flood of karmic images entered Guan's vision as he saw her past. It turned out the continent from which the ephemera sect hailed was under the thumb of the Great Cold Demon sect, which was why the Seven Stars spirit realm dared not use 9 Nether Road to reach the other worlds. There, the Great Cold Demon sect was sovereign while the ephemera sect was merely a regional sect. No comparison between the two could be made. According to the ghost mother of ephemera's words to Zhang Qiong, the decline of the ephemera sect was influenced by the Great Cold Demon sect. Long ago, that continent did not belong to the Great Cold Demon sect. Following the unification, Juhua sect, like other sects, shared access to the 9 Nether Road, which allowed the ghost mother to return to her roots, with Zhang Qiong bridging connections through her to the Great Cold Demon sect. The ghost mother knew a great cultivator within the Great Cold Demon sect. A great cultivator with only Mahayana realm cultivation, likely a lowly figure within the sect. Although Sword Venerable Fudao has recently protected the continent, how can his soul strength contend with the Great Cold Demon sect? He did not charge me with any tasks, so I deliberately returned to take you to the Great Cold Demon sect. What harm in cultivating medicinal herbs there? By joining the Great Cold Demon sect, that too could be arranged, Zhang Qiong earnestly suggested. Guan felt moved yet amused. Why did she always flip sides so easily? Guan shook his head, "No thanks. How comfortable could I be tending herbs in the powerful Great Cold Demon sect? Perhaps no sooner than joining would I be refined into an elixir. That's a demon sect." Zhang Qiong glared at him, annoyed. "With me around, who could dare to bully you? Are you highly cultivated? Surely not among the highest in the Great Cold Demon sect. But to protect you? More than enough. Just calmly stay with me then." "So I'd have to wait on you, curry favor with you?" "Exactly, how about that? Right now my feet are a bit sore, come give me a rub." Spit shameless. Guan would never agree. A man might be slain but not insulted. Looking down, his face betraying disgust, he noted that Zhang Qiong's feet, which she had only bared moments ago, were already stained with mud and grass. Zhang Qiong watched Guan's stubborn reaction, amused and keen to tease further, but she first needed to address serious matters. She spoke gravely, "Guan, this time it's different. The Great Cold Demon sect has sent vast numbers of cultivators here, their might unmatched by 7 Stars Spirit Realm or Star Sea congregations. Even Star Sea congregations contemplates retreat. Not to mention them, do you know about 9 Nether Road? Almost every sect on this continent has members desiring to flee through 9 Nether Road, including your supreme sect." Guan fell silent. Zhang Qiong continued, "Actually, joining the Great Cold Demon sect might not be ill-fated. Perhaps you'd even discover great opportunities. While innate aptitude is fated, there are plenty in this world who turn their lives around with later-day fortunes. Don't you desire the pursuit of eternal life?" Guan gazed at her, replying, "Thanks for your kindness, but I truly don't want to go. There are too many things and people here that I cannot abandon. As for fortunes you mentioned, when has this world ever offered fortune free from danger? Even venturing into the 8 scenic caves once nearly brought me peril." Hearing this, Zhang Qiong grew frustrated. Why was this boy so stubborn? Guan added, "Moreover, I feel this catastrophe might not be insurmountable. I believe in Sword Venerable Fudao, believe in the triumph of good over evil. Surely, there are many great powers in this world who can stand against the Great Cold Demon sect. I often read books, and don't they all say if man will strive then heaven will thrive? The Great Cold Demon sect, which treats life so wantonly no matter how powerful, will eventually meet its reckoning. Aligning with them is not a righteous path." With that, he raised the book in his hand with a determined expression. Chapter 292. The world has changed. Hearing Guan's words, Zhang Qiong fell into silence. She felt somewhat lost inside. She had always been faced with choices. She had escaped from the Thousand Autumn Pavilion to the Supreme Sect, then from the Supreme Sect to the Nine Nether Road, and even after establishing the Juhua Sect, she still had to flee to the Great Cold Demon Sect? Could it be that all her choices had been wrong? It seemed that no matter when she returned, Guan never changed. Guan saw the mood she was in. He was afraid of saying too much. After all, she didn't have the confidence he did. How could he judge everyone by his own standards? My nature dictates that I cannot travel far and wide. You are much stronger than I am. You can go on adventures, but you must never fully trust anyone, especially the demon sect, Guan said. Jiang Qiong snapped to attention upon hearing this. What was she thinking? If she hadn't fled, she'd already be dead. Even compared with Guan, her cultivation level was rising rapidly. Although the path seemed difficult and bitter, her cultivation was her achievement. She was now at the 7th floor of the divinity transformation realm. Thinking of this, Jiang Qiong smiled. She glared at Guan and said, "You've refused me time and again. Be careful or I might stop caring about you. When you run into trouble and think of me, it will be too late." Guan solemnly said, "As long as you are safe, it doesn't matter if you forget about me. Meeting and knowing each other in this life is a destiny forged over 100 lifetimes." Touched by his words, Jiang Qiong thought to herself, this brat knows how to talk. If his cultivation were higher, how many girls of heavenly pride would he lead astray? Of course, she believed that Guan truly thought this way and wasn't just trying to please her. After knowing him for so many years, she never heard Guan ask her for anything. Jiang Qiong looked at Guan wanting to tease him, but no words could pass her throat. That's because this time the situation was truly different. She felt that Guan had underestimated the power of the Great Cold Demon Sect. Indeed, in the past few years, when the heavenly fire calamity that covered the skies was blocked by Sword Venerable Fudao, the common beings on the mainland did not see the tragic scenes over the seas, where many creatures died in agony. The one who had acted was only a cultivator from the Great Cold Demon Sect, and now a large group of cultivators from the Great Cold Demon Sect was on their way. Just the thought filled her with despair, seeing no glimmer of hope for victory. Who in the world could stand against the colossal presence of the Great Cold Demon Sect like this? Jiang Qiong looked at Guan's gentle smiling face and suddenly felt a pang of heartache. Silly boy, what is written in books is not necessarily true. Indeed, since ancient times, good has triumphed over evil, but if evil wins, it can become the new good. Jiang Qiong did not immediately leave after returning but stayed within the 8 scenic caves. Guan would visit her every other day, each time trying various ways to persuade him, whether by tempting him with legends of the Great Cold Demon Sect or by teaching him spells. Guan steadfastly refused, but since he didn't want to confront her directly, they were at a stalemate. Half a month passed. The weather was still scorching hot. As Guan came down from the loft, he was confronted by Ji Xiaoyu at the foot of the stairs. "Who is that woman?" Ji Xiaoyu asked, staring at Guan. Her expression was calm, but her eyes seemed rather sharp. Guan was surprised and asked, "What woman? There's a scent of another woman on you. So what if there is? What about it?" Guan didn't seem to care, chuckling. After all, in this world, it's the explanations that are suspect. The less you care, the less significant it seems. In fact, nothing had happened between him and Jiang Qiong, but he couldn't betray her by revealing her plan to defect to the Great Cold Demon Sect. Guan hadn't urged Jiang Qiong to give up on joining the Great Cold Demon Sect because he wasn't sure of the sect's strength himself. If the Great Cold Demon Sect turned out to be powerful enough that even he couldn't deal with it, he'd have to flee too. Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guan and said, "Haven't you noticed a change in the atmosphere of the mortal world?" Guan looked around and said, "How has it changed? Those who should be sweeping are sweeping, those who want to play chess are still playing chess. Look, there's even a rat leading an ox." Ji Xiaoyu followed his gaze and couldn't help but shake her head and chuckle. "Never mind, it's just as well. In life, cherishing the present is enough," she said softly before turning back to her room to continue her cultivation. Guan didn't try to retain her. Instead, he kept his gaze fixed on Medicine Valley. He saw much more than Ji Xiaoyu did, and much clearer too. Ever since the real Bai Hong displayed heavenly fire, the entire sea had been engulfed by a frenzy of escape, which gradually affected the mainland. Many noble families began to venture across the seas or rush to the Nine Nether Road. Moreover, many were spreading rumors that the Great Cold Demon Sect was about to launch a massive invasion, all of which Guan knew were minions hastily recruited by the Great Cold Demon Sect cultivators, intended to sow panic in this part of the mortal world. At the say-breaking rift, the soul-calming pagoda was already crammed with countless cultivators from the Great Cold Demon Sect, the least of whom were at the Nirvana realm, with the number of heaven and earth flying immortals surpassing 100. Besides the life-seizing immortal, there were even 3 carefree primordial immortals. A total of 4 carefree primordial immortals. This force was absolutely overwhelming in this part of the mortal world, unstoppable. The key was that the Great Cold Demon Sect was still sending reinforcements. Guan hadn't made a move yet because he didn't know the full extent of the Great Cold Demon Sect's resources. However, he wasn't just waiting idly. He had already used his divine sense to scan the great heavenly spirit land, looking for a safe place far from this part of the mortal world. If he really couldn't stand against them, he would take everyone he cared about with him and leave, ready to start life anew. Of course, this was a last resort. It all depended on whether the Great Cold Demon Sect had a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. So far, the highest level among the carefree primordial immortals was only the 5th floor. Before a divine immortal of wondrous dharma appeared, Guan, who was at the 9th floor of the divine immortal of wondrous dharma realm, wouldn't panic. After watching for a while, Guan turned and left. An ancient hour later, riding on the blood prison great saint, he arrived at Tianya Valley with Zhou Xian and Li Lingtian following behind. Li Lingtian wore an impatient expression. It was clear he was not keen on coming to Tianya Valley. Li Xiandao was waiting inside the valley. Guan, accompanied by the 2 men, entered the courtyard where Li Xiandao was. By now, Li Lingxian's cultivation had reached the 8th floor of the core formation realm, pleasing Li Xiandao, who complimented him for not neglecting his cultivation. Let's get one thing straight, I don't want to go back. Besides, Father Emperor, you're still in good spirits, so there's no need for me to act as the crown prince. Li Lingtian said immediately. Li Xiandao shook his head with a smile, while Guan actually found this quite amusing. Li Xiandao planned to reign as emperor for eternity. Naturally, the crown prince was the most feared threat. The only reason Li Lingtian became the crown prince was on behalf of Empress Yang and the Yang family. Li Lingxian's words made Guan look at him with newfound respect. This youngster seemed to have the wisdom of playing the fool. Li Xiandao became serious. It's not about you returning to the palace, but to your mother's family to sail with them. There's no room for discussion. Your mother has given a strict order. Li Lingtian was taken aback. He instinctively wanted to ask why, but he quickly understood. For a time, the atmosphere in the courtyard fell silent. Li Xiandao turned to Guan and asked, "The Supreme Sect has yet to formulate a strategy. Do you want to join Lingtian in leaving?" The reason the Supreme Sect had no strategy was something Guan had heard from LV Baiyan. The Hall of Elders had debated multiple times about whether to evacuate, fearing that it might offend Sword Venerable Fudao, who had been willing to protect them. How could they run away now? Sword Venerable Fudao took action not for himself but to save them, the mortal spirits. LV Baiyan also consulted Guan, asking his opinion on whether they should evacuate. This time Guan offered no advice. He wanted the Supreme Sect to make their own decision. If the Supreme Sect chose to flee, he certainly wouldn't follow them but would find a place to hide instead. From then on, his connection with the Supreme Sect would be severed. Guan had no burdens regarding the Supreme Sect. He owed them nothing, quite the contrary, the sect owed him a lot. I'll pass. Let the Supreme Sect decide. I can't leave the Supreme Sect, Guan answered. Upon hearing this, Li Lingtian quickly said, "Father Emperor, I can also—" "Shut up." Li Xiandao barked, his eyes sharply intimidating. For a moment, Li Lingtian felt afraid. Yang Jian and the blood prison great saint looked at Li Xiandao in shock. Why did this emperor seem no ordinary man? This situation is different from before. If you follow the Supreme Sect to evacuate, chances are you will never see your mother again in this life. You must go back. Li Xiandao took a deep breath and said coldly. His mood had been bad all this time, had merely been suppressing it. He had worked hard for many years to secure his empire, and now a calamity threatened to destroy it. How could he not feel indignant? Yet compared to the immense depth of the Great Cold Demon Sect, Taizong dynasty had no intention to resist. Guan looked at Li Xiandao and asked, "Uncle, what about you?" Li Lingtian turned his gaze angrily to Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao looked at his own teacup on the table and said softly, "Everyone can escape except me." Even if I have to die, let me die alongside my subjects. With so many people in the Taizong dynasty, not all could escape. If he thought of leaving, the dynasty would surely descend into chaos. Li Lingtian froze, his eyes softening as he looked at Li Xiandao. Yang Jian also grew solemn out of respect for the emperor who had gifted him a divine weapon. The blood prison great saint hadn't expected Li Xiandao to be so resolute, and he rose from his crouch in surprise. Guan addressed Li Xiandao. Uncle, have you forgotten the goal you once sought? Li Xiandao replied, without my subjects, what is an emperor's throne worth? An emperor who cannot protect his empire is bound to fail. Even if the empire were to be rebuilt, it would be meaningless. His words inspired admiration in everyone present. Luo Hun even knelt down, expressing with a heavy voice, Your Highness, I am willing to follow and serve you unto death without regret. Li Xiandao merely waved his hand, not saying much more. Sure, he spoke sincerely, but he hadn't resigned himself to fate. He was gambling. He was betting on the sword Venerable Fudao to overturn the great cold demon sect. He couldn't forget the shock sword Venerable Fudao had brought him during past calamities. He couldn't forget that day when the skies were filled with fierce flames pressuring the living beings, and countless green lights rose up, giving him hope. He felt sword Venerable Fudao was different, a difference that perhaps even transcended cultivation levels. Despite many great cultivators in the world, he just felt that sword Venerable Fudao was the most special. From sword Venerable Fudao he sensed an aura. That was the aura of invincibility. Should sword Venerable Fudao's heart be kind, then peace would reign throughout the land. Chapter 293. How about I slice that continent in half with one sword? After staying in Tianya Valley for an ancient hour, Guan left with Blood Prison Great Saint and Yang Jian, while Li Lingtian stayed behind in Tianya Valley, as he was about to head south and venture out to sea. If nothing unexpected happened, at least in Li Lingtian's view, it would be very difficult for him to see Guan and Yang Jian again in his lifetime. When they parted, Li Lingtian asked Guan to convey a message to Ji Xiaoyu, speaking words of blessings. Master, is there really no power in the world willing to come out and stop the great cold demon sect? Blood Prison Great Saint asked with a tone full of emotion. In his world there existed no force as formidable. Yang Jian also looked towards Guan, unworried as long as his martial master was calm. Guan responded, How can there not be? Many led the charge towards the soul-calming pagoda, only to fall due to lack of strength. He spoke the truth. Every now and then a group of cultivators and demons would assault the soul-calming pagoda, and even if they perished, others would follow their will. Whether the world was good or evil it was hard to say, but one thing was certain. There existed real justice, and some cultivators deemed it more important than eternal life. Guan looked into the distance. Great cold demon sect, you'd better have something worth my fear, or even the Holy King can't protect you. What would the Holy Court do if angered? Kill if necessary, or simply flee to outer heaven. If no trouble came knocking, Guan naturally preferred to stay low in the supreme sect. But when trouble came knocking uninvited, he wouldn't swallow his pride. Along the way, having killed numerous madmen, Guan was always aware of how terrifying his ability to seize life was. In anyone else's hands, it would have caused catastrophe across the world. He managed restraint because that was who he was. Everyone had their path and he only wished to walk his without guilt. However, the more chaotic the world became, the more he desired to unleash slaughter. He wanted to kill the people of the great cold demon sect. Across the tumultuous seas lay the sea-breaking rift, splitting the ocean in two, beside which stood the towering soul-calming pagoda, its top seeming to touch the sky. The sky brimmed with stifling thunderclouds with occasional muffled thunder. At the first level of the soul-calming pagoda, the life-seizing immortal sat on a lotus throne, flanked by 3 individuals, none inferior in presence, while hundreds of great cold demon sect cultivators stood in the hall, creating a cheerful ambience with laughter, looking nothing like demon cultivators, adorned in splendid garments and dignified demeanors, some even appearing ethereal and wise. A woman in red next to the life-seizing immortal opened her eyes, turned to him and asked, Brother, how much longer must we wait? Are there still beings in this mortal region that the 4 of us cannot subdue? The other 2 carefree primordial immortals opened their eyes, their expressions indifferent, eyes fixed on the life-seizing immortal. Life-seizing immortal slowly opened his eyes, saying, Caution is the parent of safety. Bai Hong's death was too peculiar. We must not be careless. Remember what this land hides. The three carefree primordial immortals fell silent. Having lived for hundreds of thousands of years and weathered many storms, they shed their arrogance upon hearing life-seizing immortals' words. Indeed, the greater the power, the greater the caution required. At this moment, someone in the hall stepped forward and loudly said, "Venerable masters, why not ignite another disaster to test the limits of that mysterious being and drive more people away, lest they hinder us?" With these words, the hall erupted with agreement and cries for revenge for Bai Hong. Life-seizing immortals' gaze turned to the first speaker, a blue-robed Daoist with a treasure sword at his waist and a folding fan in hand, his inherent sword intent formidable even just standing there. "Xianxia, what would you like to do?" asked the life-seizing immortal. Silence followed in the hall. With a smirk, Xianxia the Daoist replied, "I wield a sword capable of slicing oceans and moons alike. How about I cleave that continent in half with a single strike?" After speaking, he raised his arms, turned to face the crowd, prompting applause and cheers in the hall. The majority of cultivators present felt no pressure but rather a playful curiosity to see who would dare oppose the great cold demon sect. Were it another mortal region they might have worried, but here, like tigers among chickens, where was the reason to fear? Watching Xianxia display such vigor, the other three carefree primordial immortals smiled, having watched him grow up and master Daoist sorcery. Now capable of standing on his own, they were naturally pleased. After a moment's hesitation, life-seizing immortal slowly nodded. Seeing this, Kingxin's smile grew larger, declaring, "In that case I will go now. Fellow disciples, come and enjoy the spectacle with me." The life-seizing immortal added, "Do not stray far. Master, rest assured." Xianxia saluted with his hands, turned and left, followed by a throng. The woman in red turned to the life-seizing immortal, saying, "Now's a good time for you to speak up and accelerate the process. After all, delay could lead to problems." Life-seizing immortal hesitated again, then slowly nodded. In Supreme Sect, within a bright hall, all elders gathered, including Lu Lingjun and Nine-Finger Divine Lord, most frowning in concern. LV Baitian, sitting in the sect leader's seat and flanked by 5 supreme elders, appeared equally at a loss. Vice Sect Leader Ji Hantian spoke out. "Sect Leader, just say what you're thinking so we can prepare in advance. We can't possibly wait until a catastrophe is upon us to start considering our response." At this, other elders also spoke up, urging LV Baitian. LV Baitian took a deep breath and said, "I fear that once we retreat, our connection with Sword Venerable Fudao will be irreversibly severed." A few agreed with him. An elder stood up and argued, "Survival is the most important thing. So far, none of us have even seen Sword Venerable Fudao, let alone understand his views on the matter. Moreover, we simply cannot compare ourselves to Sword Venerable Fudao. If he wants to flee, he can. His Dao level is beyond ours." This sentiment was echoed by others, considering not only themselves but also their disciples and descendants, each backed by influential families or intricate networks. The current Supreme Sect comprised millions of disciples, and the number scattered across various places was immeasurable. Gu Zong also sighed, unusually not supporting LV Baitian this time. Lu Lingjun also wished for the Supreme Sect to evacuate. Her reluctance to leave Supreme Sect stemmed from concern for the people of the Third Medicine Valley, hoping they wouldn't perish in this impending catastrophe. LV Baitian's expression turned extremely grim as he took another deep breath and declared, "If so, those who want to leave may do so. However, Supreme Sect must remain on this continent, empty or not. This is our stance. Without Sword Venerable Fudao, there would be no Supreme Sect today." As he spoke these words, he relaxed. A smile appeared on his face, the decision lifting the burden from his shoulders. It would be death at worst. His statement caused an uproar in the hall. "Sect leader, think again. If it really comes to it, why not ask the elder in front of the heaven-cutting axe for advice? You can't make such arbitrary decisions. Yes, what does it mean to say the sect can be empty but not leave? Where does that leave our dignity? The sect is a whole. We must advance or retreat together. Sect leader, let's leave together. We can ask Sword Venerable Fudao to join us." LV Baitian, listening to their words, felt their hypocrisy. A bunch of cowards afraid to take responsibility and scared to die. As he was about to speak, a voice suddenly echoed through the heavens and earth. From today my disciple Xianxia the Daoist will annihilate one region each day. Worldly beings, your time is running out. Today let's see which region's creatures are most pitiable, unfortunate enough to be the first annihilated. As the life-seizing immortal's voice faded, a chill ran through everyone in the hall. They were not frightened by his words, but felt a terrifying sword intent targeting them. More precisely, every sentient being on the continent was terrified by this sword intent. Chapter 294. Deadline of Death. Inside the Third Medicine Valley, Guan and an Exan stood in a garden area with Guan instructing what to plant next. An Exan listened attentively. Just then the voice of the life-seizing immortal suddenly echoed. He was actually planning to exterminate one region of heaven and earth every day. An Exan had no time to think further when a terrifying sword intent descended, causing a drastic change in her complexion. The previously bustling Medicine Valley fell silent in an instant. An Exan felt as if she were being crushed by a mountain, almost unable to breathe, which turned her complexion even paler. Suddenly, a hand landed on her shoulder, making her heart tremble. Before she could think further, the pressure on her body abruptly vanished. She turned her head instinctively and seeing it was her master's hand, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Master, could it be that they've chosen the continent we're on?" An Exan asked cautiously. Even though she was carefree on normal days, she feared death when faced with it. The words of the life-seizing immortal, coupled with the sudden sword intent, made it clear that the first chosen continent was the one they were on. Guan took a deep breath and feigned composure. "Unclear, let's go back inside first. Within the confines of the Supreme Sect, such calamities are not our concern. Whether we live or die, we leave it to fate." An Exan wanted to speak again, but Guan pulled her away. Another voice rang out in Medicine Valley, "Amit Ba." With Shinzin's words, everyone in Medicine Valley felt relieved, and disciples ran towards the pavilions. Rumble. The earth trembled as the Supreme Sect activated its great protective formation. Golden barriers rose up from all directions. By the time Guan and his companion reached the pavilion, Zhou Xian had already stepped outside. She gazed at the sky, the red Dao patterns on her forehead starting to flicker with tiny flames. Seeing this, Guan quickly approached her and asked, "You weren't frightened just now, were you?" Zhou Xiaoyu's Dao patterns returned to normal as Guan blocked her view. Her expression calmed down and she nodded. "No, it seems the life-seizing immortal is targeting the continent. It's probably related to the actions of Sword Venerable Fudao years ago." Guan comforted her. "Don't overthink it. If the enemy is acting this way, it means Sword Venerable Fudao is still around. Take care of the valley for me, I need to make a trip to Mystic Valley." With that, Guan quickly headed towards the transmission array platform. Zhou Xiaoyu looked at his receding figure, wanting to say something, but she couldn't find the words. Somehow this scene felt familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere. Guan swiftly arrived in Mystic Valley and saw Lu Jiujia already calling disciples to take cover. He nodded to himself in approval. Taking advantage of the moment when no one was paying attention, he quickly walked into the woods pretending to inspect medicinal herbs. "Are you courting death? Caring about your flowers and plants at a time like this? You must be insane." The voice of Jiang Qiong came from behind, and Guan turned to look, seeing her with an ugly expression walking towards him. She looked at Guan and said with resentment, "Now I can't even escape if I want to. Let's wait for death together." She could feel the sword intent approaching rapidly. Even if she tried to escape now, she was afraid it would be too late to reach the Nine Nether Road. Guan, squatting on the ground, couldn't help but punch the grass, picking up a handful of fallen leaves before standing up, his face filled with unwillingness. Jiang Qiong looked at his expression and suddenly laughed, teasing, "What's wrong? Scared?" Guan tossed the leaves in his hand forward as if venting his anger. He then turned to look at Jiang Qiong and said, "I'm not afraid. I just find this disdain for life detestable." Jiang Qiong fell silent, then said, "Come with me to the 8 scenic caves." Guan nodded and followed her up the mountain. Jiang Qiong didn't notice the leaves that Guan had thrown floated up again, each leaf trembling. Only after they entered the entrance of the 8 scenic caves did the leaves disappear into the forest. In front of the soul-calming pagoda, tens of thousands of great cold demon sect cultivators floated in the air, their eyes focused on Qingxin Zhenren, who was holding a sword. Such exquisite sword intent, elder brother Kingxin's supreme mysterious sword Dao has reached the transformation realm. Indeed powerful, enough to sweep across the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. I heard that elder brother Bai Hong was defeated by elder brother Qingxin 1,000 years ago. The founder of the supreme mysterious sword Dao, the supreme mysterious ancestor, went to the Holy Land long ago. In 10,000 years, the only one who has reached such a level with the supreme mysterious sword Dao is elder Qingxin. This sword strike, everyone should watch carefully, it is a rare sight. The great cultivators of the great cold demon sect discussed animatedly, mostly in a light-hearted tone. Even though they already knew about the fall of Bai Hong, they were not panicked. They had the numerical advantage this time, and with 4 carefree primordial immortals as their support, how could they possibly die? Qingxin Jinren positioned his treasure sword in front of him, the blade perfectly aligning with his eyes. Suddenly he opened his eyes, which astonishingly turned green. As soon as he opened his eyes, his sword intent fully erupted, silencing the surrounding noise. All eyes fell on Qingxin Jinren, and with a stern look he immediately slashed with his sword. Sword light gleamed, chilling the heaven and sea, and even the rolling thunderclouds above were illuminated. As Qingxin Jinren swung his sword intent transformed into terrifying sword qi, shooting forward as his pupils suddenly contracted. In the reflection of his pupils, numerous green dots grew rapidly. From the onlooker's perspective, Qingxin Jinren's sword slashed out a terrifying sword qi tens of thousands of miles long, like a crescent moon sweeping across the sky. At that moment, a series of green light beams shot from the edge of the sky with even greater speed, too fast for anyone to react. Boom! The sword qi scattered, and Qingxin Jinren's eyes widened in disbelief as a green light reached him in a blink of an eye. As if time stood still, he saw a falling leaf amidst the green light. The leaf, carrying terrifying sword qi, directly shattered Qingxin Jinren's physical body and extinguished his soul. It wasn't just one leaf. Dozens more did the same, annihilating great cultivators of the great cold demon sect, the soul-calming pagoda trembling violently. The life-seizing Immortal and his 4 carefree primordial immortal companions appeared out of thin air, casting spells swiftly to form a vast barrier, protecting all the disciples around them. Silence. The world rapidly fell into quietness, and all the disciples of the great cold demon sect trembled, displaying fear no longer masked by their previous nonchalant demeanor. The life-seizing Immortal turned his head, noticing the leaves embedded all over the surface of the soul-calming pagoda, his pupils narrowing. Those leaves. The attack was too fast, so fast that by the time they realized it, more than a dozen disciples had died, all heaven and earth flying immortals. Even the red-clothed woman who had been urging the life-seizing Immortal to speed up the process couldn't speak now. As powerful as the carefree primordial immortals were, they were filled with dread. The enemy had struck too fast, killing disciples right under their noses. It was as if someone had slapped them across the face, leaving a burning sensation. Guan followed Jiang Qiong into the 8 scenic caves, with prompts of lifespan continuously appearing before him. This strike seized 4,300,000 years of lifespan. Guan hadn't used his full strength, but it was enough to terrify the life-seizing Immortal and his associates. If they could summon even stronger beings, then they should call them sooner. If not, even if they gave up on exterminating this region of the mortal world, Guan would not let them go. The 100-year mandate set by the life-seizing Immortal had already become his death sentence in Guan's mind. Jiang Qiong let out a sound of surprise, feeling the terrifying sword intent suddenly disappear. Guan then asked, "Could it be that we've escaped this disaster?" Without looking back, Jiang Qiong replied, "Can't say for sure." The two made their way to the green vine tree, with Jiang Qiong starting to set up the formation. Guan asked her what she was doing. The smaller the range of the formation, the stronger its protection. "I want to see if we can escape this disaster. Let's take a gamble. If it doesn't work, we're dead anyway, so worrying then would be pointless," Jiang Qiong casually answered, making Guan want to cry and laugh at the same time. Meanwhile, the entire continent was in a state of tension. Even though the sword intent had vanished, the tightly wound nerves of all beings on the continent could not immediately relax. Many beings began to flee, and Guan even felt many presences flying out of the supreme sect, all in groups, which were noble families in flight. Inside the third medicine valley, Ji Hantian landed swiftly and found Ji Xiaoyu. The two conversed inside the house. "I'm not leaving," Zhou Xiaoyu stated, expressionless. Upon hearing this, Ji Hantian became angry, but for some reason looking at Zhou Xiaoyu he thought of a fellow descendant with the same name and surname. Although they looked different, their expressions at this moment made them seem like the same person. Ji Hantian's anger dissipated somewhat and he said solemnly, "Regardless of whether the life-seizing immortal has chosen this continent, there will only be more dangers ahead. The Ji family must preserve its lineage. Why do you insist on staying?" Ji Xiaoyu looked at him. "Someone must stay. I can give my spot to someone else. Besides, where can we flee to?" Ji Hantian felt suffocated with frustration. Years ago he had tried to forcibly keep another Ji Xiaoyu without success. Now he wanted this Ji Xiaoyu to leave, but it was still not possible. He couldn't understand why these descendants always opposed him. He was always looking out for their best interest. "There's no time left. You'd better go and persuade the other clan members," Ji Xiaoyu reminded. Ji Hantian glared at her and left immediately. Ji Xiaoyu was not his direct descendant, so he could only advise without the right to forcibly take her away. Once Ji Hantian had departed, Ji Xiaoyu thought for a moment and then walked out of her house. She went outside the courtyard looking up at the sky, only to see numerous cultivators flying over Medicine Valley. It was unclear whether they were fleeing or preparing for battle. "The Great Cold Demon Sect," Ji Xiaoyu murmured to herself, the Dao patterns between her eyebrows once more emitting thin flames. Time passed amidst the panic of beings below. The people were trapped in agony and anxiety. Until an ancient hour later the atmosphere began to ease. Elder Lu looked at Xianxia and asked, "Senior, were we not chosen?" The other disciples looked at Xianxia as well. Xianxin's background was very mysterious, but the higher-ups of the Supreme Sect held him in high regard. Such an existence would certainly see further than they could. Xianxia frowned deeply, looking towards the sky, and said, "Indeed, we were not chosen." At his words, all the disciples rejoiced. Chapter 295. The Great Cold Demon Sect Attacks. Upon hearing Xianxin's words, the disciples of Medicine Valley all cheered, yet Xianxia hesitated as if he wanted to say more. He intended to say one thing, that it seemed no continent had been chosen. To obliterate a continent, what immense power it must require. He, being from the 9th layer of the wandering immortal realm, could surely sense it. However, he could not openly mention this for fear that these mortals would be terrified. Even if they knew what would happen next, what could they do? Better to enjoy this surprise and live the remaining days as carefree as possible. Time continued to pass. With the moon setting and the sun rising, only when the next day's sunlight swept across the great heaven and earth did the creatures of the continent finally breathe a sigh of relief, for the life-seizing immortal had said that each day one continent would be chosen, and they had survived the first day. The situation at the Supreme Sect also settled down. Although many noble families began to retreat, the core foundation remained unshaken. When Guan returned to the 3rd Medicine Valley, normalcy had returned to Medicine Valley. After Xiaochuan left and an Exon began to manage Medicine Valley, and because of her gentle nature most disciples liked her, so there had been no issues under her management. Xinjin found him soon after he returned. "Do you want a place to hide?" Xinjin asked with a smug smile, her eyes gleaming behind her veil. While walking toward a distant garden, Guan casually asked, "How would we hide?" Following his steps, Xinjin explained, "I can hide you inside a painting or scroll and then keep it hidden. Wouldn't that be a refuge? People are trying to obliterate continents. Where could you hide?" "Underground, of course." He said he would obliterate continents. Sure, he meant to demolish the mortals and shatter the land, not obliterate the earth completely. That makes sense. Are you a genius by any chance? Guan suddenly realized, looking at Xinjin with amazed eyes. A twitch appeared at the corner of Xinjin's veiled mouth, clearly perceiving the sarcasm in Guan's tone. Guan continued, "Don't overthink it. I always feel that yesterday our continent was not excluded. That mysterious pressure was no lie. Also, haven't you noticed how calm today has been?" Upon hearing this, Xinjin narrowed her eyes. "Are you suggesting that the Great Cold Demon Sect's offensive was thwarted?" "Very likely. After all, I trust that the heavens are just. There must be great cultivators out there with a heart for the mortals. A heretical path like the Great Cold Demon Sect cannot last forever." Guan declared with conviction, his face full of determination. Xinjin suddenly found it hard to judge him. Calling him foolish wouldn't explain his current stature, and calling him naive wouldn't explain how he could write something as unique as Journey to the West. You say the heavens are just. Tell me, do you believe that real immortals exist beyond those with great cultivation levels? Xinjin suddenly asked, curious. She had always believed that investiture of the gods and Journey to the West were not fabricated but were inspired by something Guan had seen, elaborated with decorative imagination and fantasy. Perhaps, as Guan claimed, an immortal guided him in his dreams. Guan and Xinjin chatted casually, a microcosm of the wider world, where everywhere people discussed the life-seizing immortal. Without his demise, the catastrophe would not end. 2 days later, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord and stealing the 5 elements returned to the Third Medicine Valley, almost as if they had planned it. Sitting before a chessboard, they exchanged a look, their eyes heavy with gravity. Did you feel it too? Stealing the 5 elements asked. The Divine Lord made his move, saying, a net of heaven and earth, no escape. Stealing the 5 elements then played his piece. How come you have no escape? I'm the one who's bound by fate. Continuing to glance towards a distant pavilion. Ji Xiaoyu was his hope. The Divine Lord fell silent, sighing deeply. Stealing the 5 elements looked at him, curiously asking, speaking of which, I've always wondered, what exactly are you looking for? The Divine Lord didn't respond, leaving Stealing the 5 elements contemplative, a subtle look crossing his face. In the Divine Exotic Realm. By the sea. The Master of Divine Exotic Realms stood before the Divine Exotic Life Tablet, surrounded by 7 Divine Exotic Ghost Kings, all of them looking up into the sky. Beneath the blood-red sky hung a swirling horsetail whisk. Compared to the calm demeanor of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm, the other Divine Exotic Ghost Kings looked uneasy, knowing whom they faced. Master of Divine Exotic Realm, prepare to join us in an expedition. A cold voice resounded, echoing through the entire great heaven and earth. In a distant cave, Zhang Buku also heard this voice and inadvertently opened his eyes, his brow furrowed in worry for the Master of Divine Exotic Realm. With an expressionless face, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm asked, an expedition to where? To avenge Divine Exotic Impermanence. The cold voice spoke again, causing the faces of the Divine Exotic Ghost Kings and the Realm Master to shift. The great cold demon sect and that entity were indeed going to clash. This battle might determine the fate of this mortal world region. In the Star Sea congregations, a small heaven and earth. And Hao stood before the palace gates, observing disciples constantly entering and exiting the floating islands, his brows deeply furrowed. A figure appeared beside him, his master, Sage Fuchen. And Hao quickly said, Master, it's good you're here, I need to speak with you. Let's talk while on the way. Prepare for retreat, we must withdraw today. Sage Fuchen said in a grave tone. Why? And Hao couldn't help but ask. The great cold demon sect is making a major descent, targeting the continent where the sword Venerable Fudao resides. They appear to be intent on sieging your master, Sage Fuchen explained. On hearing this, and Hao became anxious. Before he could reply, Sage Fuchen continued, your cultivation level won't assist your master. It's best to leave early. Your master, although strong, can't withstand the full assault of the great cold demon sect, otherwise he wouldn't be on the defensive. And Hao gritted his teeth. My concern isn't for my master. I must go back. An Exon was still within the supreme sect. How could he abandon her? He immediately leaped up, intending to forcefully break out of the Star Sea congregation's realm. Suddenly, long hair wrapped around him, surprisingly Sage Fuchen's horsetail whisk. Master! And Hao cried out in anguish, startling the other disciples. Sage Fuchen held the horsetail whisk, chanting incantations. The whisk's hairs quickly extended, gagging in Hao. I'm sorry, disciple. Sage Fuchen's eyes became resolute. This scene left the other disciples silent. Without discussion, they all understood and felt the heaviness in their hearts, likewise having people they couldn't leave behind. The Star Sea congregations were about to flee. In another realm, Liya, leveraging Divine Exotic City, forcefully broke free, unobstructed by anyone. He quickly flew out over the Star Sea, heading towards the horizon. Disciple, think carefully, once you go there is no turning back. An old voice sounded, and as Liya turned his head he didn't see his master's figure. He did not answer but instructed the divine exotic immortal spirit on his shoulder to move forward. The divine exotic immortal spirit howled, and the divine exotic city immediately displayed extraordinary speed, streaking towards the horizon. After flying for a while and seeing no one pursued, Liya relaxed, his gaze hardened. Junior brother Gu, wait for me. And the old ancestor, I wonder if you're still thinking of me. Liya thought silently, his face heavy. Initially, his emotions weren't profoundly impacted, fueled only by fury as Zhang Buku became a divine exotic resentful ghost. However, the moment the Star Sea congregations announced their departure, he panicked. The Star Sea congregations were a major force at sea. If there was any chance of victory, they wouldn't be abandoning their domain. Hearing that the great cold demon sect aimed to target the sword Venerable Fudao, he couldn't contain himself. The sword Venerable Fudao was his primordial ancestor. He was less worried about him as the ancestor could escape if he couldn't fight, but he feared for the others who might not escape. Had to be quick. Liya clenched his teeth, fearing the continent had already fallen. The divine exotic immortal spirit, however, was not panicked, leaping joyfully in the air, which both irritated and envied Liya. This creature seemed to fear nothing, its confidence was unknown. Time rapidly passed. 2 ancient hours later. Liya, sitting atop the tower meditating, suddenly sensed something, opening his eyes to find the divine exotic city enveloped in darkness. Instinctively he looked up, then his eyes widened in disbelief. How possible? Liya murmured to himself, his voice trembling, his eyes full of despair. In the third medicine valley. At the garden fence, Guan was stretching his muscles. Passing by, Yu Yingying curiously asked, "What are you doing? Isn't there exercise in the morning?" Guan replied, "Just felt like moving." "Is that not allowed?" What followed was sure to be a great battle. It must be said the great cold demon sect was indeed frightening. The dense auras attacking from all directions were overwhelmingly oppressive, and once they arrived, if seen by the denizens of the continent, it would surely cause legs to tremble. Yu Yingying looked at him, unable to resist asking, "Everyone is worried about the calamity, why aren't you afraid?" "Because I'm not afraid, so I'm not frightened," Guan responded casually, his words leading Yu Yingying to glare, feeling the urge to punch him. She couldn't understand Guan at all. Out for experience, he feared death, yet with calamity impending he seemed not to fear it. Truly a baffling person. Yet somehow the more anxious she felt, the more she wanted to talk to Guan. Perhaps it was his fearless demeanor. Guan guessed her thoughts and smiled. "Whether you worry or fear, it won't change anything, will it?" Yu Yingying opened her mouth, unsure how to respond. Guan drew his heavenly residence sword, suddenly unsheathing it. The sword's light gleamed in Yu Yingying's face, snapping her out of her trance. Looking at Guan holding the sword, Yu Yingying's earlier illusion re-emerged, his forehead marked with golden patterns, appearing extraordinary as if an immortal lord on earth. She had to admit, although Guan's cultivation level wasn't impressive, his appearance and bearing were truly out of this world, unlike a mortal. Guan raised his sword towards Yu Yingying, the blade's tip reflecting in her pupils, causing her to shiver. "If only this sword could slash away the fear in your hearts, how wonderful would that be?" Guan said wistfully. Yu Yingying was left in a daze. Chapter 296. The Strongest Sword. Sunlight shone on Guan, and Yu Yingying felt as if he were draped in a layer of rosy clouds, his whole being radiating with splendor. She actually believed that Guan was speaking the truth. Guan's gaze fell on her and he raised an eyebrow asking, "What? Are you intimidated by my aura of righteousness?" Yu Yingying snapped back to reality and glared, "Who can't say things like that? If your sword is really that powerful, would you still be holed up here?" "Haha, what do you know? Hurry up and leave, don't disturb my cultivation." Guan smiled, then sheathed his sword smoothly, believing himself to look quite dashing. Sadly, Yu Yingying was blind to it. Yu Yingying snorted and turned to leave. As she turned around, a smile appeared on her face. Talking with this silly boy had indeed had an effect. Her heart felt much better. At the same moment, under the tree, Xianxia opened his eyes, his gaze profound. His hand clutching the prayer beads moved faster, clearly anxious. Next to him, Wuxia and Nine-Finger Divine Lord, who were playing chess, stood up. "Let's call this game a draw," declared Nine-Finger Divine Lord without room for doubt. Wuxia's eyes widened in disbelief. You're almost wiped out by me and you dare call it a draw? Nine-Finger Divine Lord said nonchalantly with a straight face and unwavering confidence. The outcome is uncertain until the end. Wuxia shook his head with a smile but said nothing more, disappearing into thin air. Nine-Finger Divine Lord's gaze swept over Medicine Valley, landing on the distant figure of Guan. What a pity, I haven't won a single game against you yet. Nine-Finger Divine Lord muttered to himself before he too disappeared on the spot. Guan, who was stretching his limbs, felt numerous cultivators and demons taking flight across the continent, rushing towards its edges. Before the cataclysm, some wished to flee while others wished to fight. Those wishing to fight were driven by courage, righteousness, or compulsion, but at this moment they had all made their decision. The question was whether they could maintain that courage once they witnessed the true might of the great cold demon sect. Guan turned and walked toward the transmission array platform. Along the way, the number of disciples who greeted him diminished, everyone preoccupied with their thoughts. After reaching Mystic Valley, Guan made his way toward the outskirts of Medicine Valley. Entering the woods, he drew out the Heavenly Residence sword in one hand while unsheathing the Qinghong sword with the other. The Qinghong sword buzzed faintly as Guan used his own mana to sever its connection with the White Spirit sword. He could sense his junior sister's unease. "Do not fear, junior sister, it will soon pass," Guan murmured to himself, and as his words dropped, he was shrouded in a dark purple demonic chi that quickly engulfed his body, blazing furiously. His figure vanished into the depths of the forest, leaving no trace behind. At the edge of the continent, towering waves crashed against the shore. Above the mountains, great cultivators hovered in the air, with the vast landscape behind them and the endless ocean ahead. They hailed from different sects: Supreme Sect, Three Pure Ones Mountain, Sangtian Sect, Daotian Sect, Sword Sect, Candle Sky Peak, Flame Sect, Juhua Sect, and more. Sects across the world continuously dispatched cultivators to different edges of the continent. They were just one group gathering rapidly beyond 100, with more cultivators on their way. As their numbers grew, a newfound confidence began to swell inside them. Qiao Dai, a cultivator from Supreme Sect with a cultivation level of the 9th layer of the Mahayana realm, became the leader, calming the surrounding cultivators and beginning to give battle instructions. Just then an overwhelmingly terrifying pressure descended, prompting them to turn their heads in shock. In the next second their faces paled and even the ever-confident Qiao Dai gaped in despair. A vast black fog rolled in from the horizon like a wave of darkness, unstoppable and devouring the skies and earth. Before the black fog, islands and demon beasts appeared insignificantly small like dust. Even flying beasts were engulfed by the fog from behind, their fates uncertain. Looking up, shadows of different figures hovered above the black fog, clothed distinctly, wielding different Dharma treasures. Some had glowing artifacts floating behind them, some rode fierce mounts, and others stood proudly atop sword chi with their hands behind their backs. Each one was shadowed by a towering phantom 1,000 feet high, appearing like demon gods, their silhouettes a mirror of themselves. At first glance, there were endless towering demon phantoms of 1,000 feet high that could not be counted, creating an overwhelming sense of oppression. At this moment the continent cultivators were plunged into dead silence, everyone stunned as if struck by lightning, frozen in midair. Qiao Dai saw behind these 1,000-foot demon phantoms an even more terrifying presence. With legs walking forward, the phantoms unable to reach even the ankles of this mysterious existence. It was impossible to imagine the true size. Some tried to look sideways. Wherever the ocean spread, there stood demon phantoms, casting them into despair not only by the disparity in cultivation levels but also the sheer numerical difference between friends and foes. "How can we win?" someone said with a bitter laugh. No one responded, their courage faltered. Above the clouds, Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Wuxia stood shoulder to shoulder, witnessing the entire continent surrounded by the great cold demon sect cultivators from all directions. "There are so many, even the divine exotic realm is here." Wuxia clicked his tongue, sensing that the number of demon sect cultivators was no less than the divine exotic resentful ghosts. Most importantly, these demon cultivators' combined aura was astonishing, with many individual auras strong enough to make him wary. Nine-Finger Divine Lord took a deep breath and scanned the continent as if searching for something. With such commotion, could the Saint World Holy King truly have reincarnated in this land? Wuxing couldn't help but ask. Nine-Finger Divine Lord looked into the distance and replied, "If the Holy Heart awakens with the Holy King's capabilities, rising to power won't be difficult. But the Great Cold Demon sect fears that the Holy Court might detect the aura of the Saint World Holy King." After hearing this, Wuxing found it to make sense and he stepped forward. "What are you planning to do?" inquired Nine-Finger Divine Lord hastily. Without turning back, Wuxing strode forward through the air, raising his hand with a laugh. "Forgot to tell you, I am the divine exotic ghost king Wuxing. Wuxing is just a pseudonym." Nine-Finger Divine Lord frowned but didn't get angry, just watched as Wuxing advanced. "Wuxing, return to your place at once." The voice of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm rang out, loud and clear. Wuxing accelerated immediately, but suddenly his face darkened. He looked up only to see an immensely large hand reaching out from behind the demon army, covering the sky and aiming to seize him. The size of this hand was beyond what words could describe. Wuxing was horrified to discover that he was frozen in place. "This is bad." Despair filled Wuxing's eyes. At that moment, a powerful sword light forcefully entered his field of vision, and immediately after, the terrifying giant hand disintegrated before him. Subconsciously glancing over, his eyes widened in shock. He saw a figure he would never forget for all eternity. It was Guan, who had utilized the 9 Extremes Yin-Yang body back in the divine exotic realm. Guan, holding 2 swords covered in dark purple demonic qi, brushed past Wuxing. As his words hung in the air, Guan turned into a fleeting shadow, and in a flash, a streak of sword light appeared, boldly piercing through the distant black fog. Before Wuxing could react, a terrifying wave of energy struck. His mouth agape, he looked on in disbelief. As he watched, a streak of sword qi burst from within the demon army, cutting a swath through the 1,000-foot demon phantoms at the waist. The light of the sword qi stripped the entire world of color in an instant. The continent cultivators were dazzled into closing their eyes, the mortal spirits unable to glimpse this sword light. Above the clouds, Nine-Finger Divine Lord's face also transformed, his soul shaken by the impact. In his eyes, the demon phantoms perished, the black fog churned, and a sword light rapidly stretched, as if intent on splitting the very heavens and earth in two. In that moment, Nine-Finger Divine Lord, who had lived for 170,000 years, witnessed the strongest sword strike of his life. "Who are you?" A voice full of both shock and rage erupted, the tone laced with fear.